Um, I am trying a different time today, Sunday late morning, to see if I receive viewers. So let's see if that happens. Usually don't stream at this time, but just wanted to see how this goes. This is just an experiment. So if I don't get many viewers, that's fine. Right now, I am talking to myself because there's no people in the chat room yet. But, you know, I know that people will see this on the replay, so that's fine with me. Uh, this will be a touchy subject, and for people who may not be a part of the Black community, maybe some of you might just want to observe and not actually participate. If so, that's fine. But you know, I'm I'm still gonna say you can still participate in the conversation. However, I will say that you may not have a reference for this, FYI. But the topic is, about to set myself up here so I can sit down comfortably, grab my iced coffee. Guys, you can buy me a coffee at the Buy Me a Coffee app. As you see, I do genuinely drink coffee, so you can always buy me a coffee at the Buy Me a Coffee app. Or you can just show me love with a super sticker, or you can donate to the Cash App. Whatever. It's all good. But would I'd highly appreciate a like and subscribe. That helps a lot with the algorithm. Share the videos. And not just this video, I have plenty of other videos, like long form videos. Like I just uploaded one yesterday where my friend and I have a interesting talk about women, because he wanted to get it out there and vent about something he was thinking about with women always raging against the machine when it comes to patriarchy and society and stuff like that. So he felt like getting that out. Hi, Lewis. So this conversation, like I said, might be touchy, but this is about, are Black women mad at Black men because overwhelmingly we don't want to support Kamala Harris? What's up, Ferrari? Do I play college football? No. And I'm not in college. I'm at 46. So Elizabeth says, hi, shout out me from the Philippines. What's up, Elizabeth Lugnessen? Elizabeth, can you give me a like and subscribe, please, since I gave you a shout out? And I hope you return to the channel anytime. And if I'm doing this during a time when you can't watch Elizabeth, then watch it on the replay, okay? Appreciate it. Ferrari says I'm Korean. That's what's up. Um, I don't know how to say your name, Maito, but he says Harris 47. Well, if that's your view, that's fine. But again, this topic is about why Black men, such as myself, foundational Black American men, I want to be very clear about that. Foundational Black American men, like actual Black men, um, are overwhelmingly not supporting Harris. So, what's up, Vishnu? That's a that's a pretty dope name, dude. I gotta tell you, like, your name is Vishnu. Like, that's pretty dope. um, you didn't have to. You had to retract your statements, Ferrari. Like I said, everyone's welcome in my chats. Like I don't discriminate against anyone. All I ask is that everyone be respectful to each other and to myself. Make me laugh says hi. Jackie Galarosa says hi. Hi host watching from Australia. Thumbs up. Done all the bell. Thanks. You Rube says you voting Trump. Yes, I am. Um, I think right now, Rube, that's what the conversation is about. There's a lot of black men who are either going to stay home and not vote at all, or they're going to vote Trump. Even though the current polls show Harris and Trump at 50-50, like neck and neck with each other, it's going to come down to a lot of things. Um, One, the swing states like Michigan and Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, those places, and it's going to come down to these big voter blocks. Like the black people used to be a huge voting block for Democrats, but younger generations are voting based on policy now. They're not voting based on party, and they're not voting based on identity. Like that sort of game, it's not. I have to give my. I have to tip my hat to the younger people in that regard. That they're no longer voting just based off party or based off identity. That's one. So I always talk bad about younger people, but this is one of the things I can say positively about them is that I think they're making smarter voting choices. Uh, oh, you're welcome, Vishnu. Roel says, "May I know whom you'll be for whom you will be voting?" Sorry, I'm a grammar Nazi. I'm gonna change that uh, when I read it. Um, so yeah, I'm voting for Trump as I've stated in many videos. Let's talk like rappers now. No, we won't be talking like rappers. I don't talk like a rapper. I don't know what that even means exactly to you, but no, I speak standard American English. I can code switch when I want to, but I'm not going to do that. Um, Robert D says policy project 2025. All right, first of all, let's dispel that myth. First of all, Project 25 is not a policy. It was a book written by people within the Heritage Foundation to be to um, basically as their manifesto for what they would like the Trump administration to handle. It was the Heritage Foundation is a long-standing conservative think tank. They are not policymakers. Okay, they're not policymakers. Now, are there some people within the Heritage Foundation that are connected to the Trump's team? Yes. However, they're not. Those people in the Heritage Foundation are not policymakers. They are part of a think tank for a long-standing conservative group, and they wrote this huge, like, I don't know how many pages, like 600, 800 pages of what's called the Project 2025. And again, it's a huge manifesto of how they would like the Trump administration, assuming they win the election, to run the government. That's not a policy. That's again, it's an idea. Moreover, Trump himself has gone online and on, you know, in interviews and said that he disagrees with many of the aspects of the so-called Project 2025. One of the head, uh, I don't know, authors or people who was responsible in writing it actually has left his position because of criticism over over it. So that's all I'll say about that. Um, Jackie says, "Is it a presidential election there already? Sorry for being ignorant." You're fine. Yes, there's a presidential election this November, and in America, they will stretch election season a year, 2 years before there's an actual election, because the way electoral politics works here in America, they're so concerned over the next term that by the time someone wins an election, then they're then they become preoccupied with who's going to win the next one right after the first election is passed. It's an obsession that drives a lot of people away from interest in politics because no one wants to be constantly just preoccupied with who's running and who's going to run after this person runs. Like it causes like voter apathy. But Bruce says, for the young, it's about what policies are better for their future. Absolutely. And it should be like that for everyone. But unfortunately, like people from my generation and older people, like the civil rights generation, these people were these people just cared about we need to vote in Democrats because they had a mistaken belief that the Democrats would do more for black people than the Republicans. And we know from 50 years of history now that that's simply not true. They pay us a lot of lip service, but when it came to actual policies to improve the lot for black people, they did very little. If anything, some of the things they did put in place actually worked against us. And a lot of people see that now. Malik says, hello, what's up, Malik? Robert D says, why would you vote for Trump? So that's a genuine question. I don't mind answering that. So for one, I'm done with the Democratic Party. They're I think the way they've paid lip service to the black community for the last 50 years while actually not putting in any policies to genuinely help them has been very disingenuous and um, damaging to the black community. I um, I also remember during Trump's administration that the economy was doing much better. Um, and he helped black people. He did things that neither Biden did nor Obama. He gave us he gave prison reform, and let's be honest, a lot of those people behind bars were black men. He gave money to historically black colleges and universities, and for some odd reason, he supported a lot of well, this isn't really a selling point, but it's just sort of a odd feature of Trump that he was actually well liked within the hip hop community before he ran for office, and even after the hip hop community, some of them at least turned their backs on him when he ran for office. He was still supporting many of these hip hop artists when they got into legal trouble. Like he pardoned Lil Wayne, he helped ASAP Rocky get out of jail in the Netherlands, and a few other examples. And on top of that, he never did anything that hurt the black community when he was in office from 2016 to 2020. In fact, when he ran for office in 2016, he legitimately said, "Hey, I understand that you guys don't want to vote for me or whatever." He was like, "But Why not? He said, why not give me a try? What would it, why, what would it hurt you just to give me a try? That was a genuine, that was a genuine outreach. Meanwhile, Biden came onto this hip hop morning show with Charlemagne the God, um, the Breakfast Club, and when Charlemagne the God said, "Hey man, we would love to have you back on the show. Maybe you can come up out here to New York so you can talk to people, answer some questions for us." That should have been an easy layup for Joe Biden. Instead, he said, "Well, he said they got questions." He said, "Well, let me tell you this." He said, "If they still wondering whom they need to vote for," he said, "they ain't black." This is the sort of this is the sort of chutzpah that comes out of the Democratic Party. They think they already own that they own the black vote already, so they don't have to do anything for us. And that if we do anything outside of voting Democrat, then that somehow calls into question our blackness. So this is just one of many examples of why I'm voting for Trump, Robert. And we can get into more as the chat progresses. Um, just as if I hear one more person say Project 2025 on Trump, I know, right? Right, Jeff? Like I'm saying, people keep trying to connect that to him. He did not write that. His team did not write that. That was written by the conservative think tank, the Heritage Foundation. It's like an 800-page manifesto. It's not it's not policy. Like they're not policy makers. Like it's just a way of trying to scare people into not voting for Trump. Like, oh, if you vote for Trump, they're going to do the Project 2025. Well, guess what? Some of those policies, well, some of those, not policies, some of those, um, some of those things that they would like to become policy, I'm actually for. Some I'm not, but some I am. So you can't like is a there's a lot of fallacies and shaming tactics used by people on the left and the Democrats specifically to try to scare people, particularly black people, into voting Democrats. And that's one of the reasons why I reject them outrightly. Anananki says hi from Texas. Why you spell Texas that way? Cool G says, I grew up in a Democrat family. I'm glad that I'm out the matrix. Feels good being off the plantation. Here, here. Here, here. Robert Cole says special interest. I'm not sure what that refers to. Alvis is getting timed out for being a clown. Uh, Robert says it's the groundwork Trump was talking about the Heritage Foundation land for the future. Did he though? The groundwork is not policy. So you can't, you're moving the goalposts, my friend. You can't say that this is policy for Trump and then say, oh, well, it's the groundwork. So you're moving the goalposts. We established it's not actually policy. So now you're conceding to the fact that no, this is just an idea made up by the Heritage Foundation for what they would like to see happen in the next administration. Which fine, but again, Trump has not signed off on Project 2025, so it's just a scare tactic at this point. It's a scare tactic for Democrats to say, well, if you vote for Trump or if you don't vote at all, then they're going to institute the Project 2025. I don't care. I care about I care about the economy. I care about getting all these illegals out of the country who are taking resources from the black community. I care that you have fucking illegal immigrants who have like $13,000 on their EBT card with $5,000 cash. That's what I care about. I care about the border being a national security issue, that all these people coming in over the border. These aren't even Mexicans. These are people coming from other countries through the Mexican border. That's what I care about. I care about the economy, and I care about national security. I don't care about this whole scare tactic that Democrats are hoping will work on black people. I'm smarter than the average bear, so if you think that I'm going to fall for these little scare tactics that the Democrats have been using as a game plan since the 70s, you're mistaken. However, you should vote for whatever you think aligns with your interests. So I'm not going to tell people whom to vote for. What I will say is you should vote smartly, vote for what aligns with your interests. Don't vote just on party. Don't vote just on identity politics. Oh, this person is black or black adjacent in Kamala's case because she's not a black person, and I stand on that. And we're going to get into that's why one of the features of why black men are rejecting Kamala Harris. But vote based on your interests. Don't vote party. Don't vote identity. Vote on whose policies and campaign promises align with your own individual interests. Miguel says they will influence the Trump team. That's possible. Well, it's possible that it will influence the Trump team, but again, influence and saying it's a policy, is their policies are two different things. Again, I'm a pedantic person. I'm grounded in things called logic and reason and evidence and statistics. So, in doing so, I recognize the fallacy of moving the goalpost from one thing to the other. If you say this is their policies, then we as firmly established it is not their policies, then you say, well, no, it's just their groundwork for what they want to do when they get into office. Okay, but that's not policy. And then we establish, okay, well, this is basically just a, a set of ideas that they would like to implement. Then we move the goalpost again and say, well, they're going to influence the Trump team. Okay, that's fine. That may happen. But again, it's not policy. That's what I want to establish. Kaja says, hi, I'm new here. How you doing, Kaja? Robert Cole says, school of choice. Absolutely. Robert D says, Heritage Foundation has written much of Republican policy. Okay. I never denied that the Republicans aren't influenced by the Heritage Foundation. Again, we're moving the goalpost. It's not their policies. This is just their this is just an ideology. Okay? So yes, the conservative think tank is very influential within the Republican base. The Democrats have liberal think tanks to do the exact same thing. So let's not let's invoke the fairness maximum. Excuse me. Let's invoke the fairness maxim here and say that both sides are influenced by political think tanks that align with their ideologies. Cool G says, thank you, you're welcome. Robert D says they have massive power. Yes, again, that's not unique. So does the Democrats. They have think tanks on their side as well. There's one in particular, but I can't think of the name. Maybe someone in the chat can drop it, but there are very influential think tanks on the left as well. Some people might find them problematic. But hey, Robert D says Trump is always evasive. So are most politicians. Again, we're going to invoke the fairness maximum. This is why I'm an independent, because people who are partisan don't realize that both parties play the same game. Biden wasn't evasive. Harris wasn't evasive. Obama wasn't evasive. Clinton wasn't evasive. Bush wasn't evasive. It's, it's politically expedient at times to not be held to a certain, to be held to certain things when things might change on the ground, where they might have to change positions on certain political um, ideas or whatever. They're all evasive. It's just that you fail to see that when it's happening on your home team. You only see it happening to the away team. I'm not being willfully blind. What I'm saying is you're being partisan. What I'm saying to you is what you are accusing them of doing, the Republicans and the Trump team, they both do. On top of that, I find it insulting that you think that you can tell me whom I'm going to vote for. I'm not telling you whom you should vote for. I'm saying to you and to everyone else in the chat, vote according to your interest. That's all I'm saying. I don't care whom you vote for. I'm saying just vote according to your interest. But I'm not going to sit here and dog someone out based on their political choices. That bullshit that you're pulling is why people aren't going to vote for Democrats and they're not going to vote for Harris, particularly black men. You're not going to fucking manipulate me into doing something that I don't want to do. Fuck that bitch. She's not even black. She didn't consider herself black until she ran for office back in 2020. They hailed her as the first Indian senator when she ran for office as a U.S. senator. Her policies as an attorney general and as a uh, state's attorney in California were very damaging to the black community there. As a matter of fact, when she was a state's attorney in the Bay Area, she has caused a lot of um, people to dislike her there. Like most of the black people in that San Francisco, Oakland Bay area said they will refuse to ever vote for that bitch. On top of that, when Biden stepped down, they should have gave the Democrats a primary. They just anointed her to take his place as the front runner for the Democratic nominee, instead of allowing Democratic voters to have a primary and pick whom they thought would be the strongest candidate. I find that very undemocratic. Cool G says, at least hit the like, y'all. It's free. Thank you, Cool G. I appreciate it, man. Yeah, you guys, like, if you appreciate the conversation, hit the like and the subscribe. I appreciate it. You don't have to send me a super chat. You don't have to send me a super sticker, although I will take them gladly. Yeah, I would gladly take those, or a Cash App, or buy me a coffee. But if you do none of those things, just leave me a like and a subscribe. That I appreciate it a lot. Hopper Bruce says the older generation is already preconditioned, almost cult like. It really is. It really is like that, Hop. Like they are really cult like in their following of the Democratic Party. And that was partly by design, by the way, by the Democratic Party. When Lyndon Johnson was in office, he said, "I'm gonna make one of his motivations for signing the Civil Rights Act into law was he said, I'm gonna have these N-words voting Democrat for the next 50 years." Well, mission accomplished. Mission accomplished. because some people forget that before FDR, back in the you know, Franklin D. Roosevelt, before Franklin D. Roosevelt in the 30s and 40s, black people overwhelmingly voted Republican back then. So, and even once, and even up until like I say the Kennedy administration and the Lyndon Johnson administration, it was still kind of split. Like a they weren't a uniform voting bloc until like after the 70s, and it's not helped us in being a monolithic um, voting bloc because we've been taken for granted by that party. Now I'm not going to like I'll be completely honest and say the Republicans would do the same thing if we voted monolithically just for them without asking for something in return. And that's what's happened with the Democrats. This is why we should not vote based on party or just off of identity politics. We should instead vote based on our interests. Like, hey, and you don't have to agree with these things, by the way, but I'm just using these as examples. We should say, hey, we want cash reparations. What are you doing on that? Oh, this politician says he'll do that. Okay, well, I'm voting for him. Or they say, hey, I want an anti-black crime hate bill, like the way you like the same one you gave the Asians. Oh, this politician says he'll do that. All right, I'm voting for him. Simple. You vote your interests. That would be the rational thing to do, but a lot of the electorate don't vote rationally. KJ says, hello, sir. I'm in Big Sandy Federal Penitentiary. I just wanted to say we love your channel and wish you nothing but prosperity. Can we get a shout out to the forgetting inmates? If if you're actually an inmate, KJ, shout out to you and all the folks there. Hope you guys are staying strong. Realize you will be out one day. Um, Hope you guys, you know, like I said, stay safe there, stay positive. Um, get that commissary money up. You know what I'm saying? um, but you know, realize you will be out here, and when you are out, you know that once your sentence is done, your voting rights shall return. So I want you guys to be politically active when you come out. Make sure you exercise your voting rights so that you can improve upon your lot once you return, so that folks like yourself who've been locked down can have a genuine second chance at life when you come out. So shout out to you guys. Stay up. Ray Ren says, read your comments, come back home. Not sure what that even means, bro. Cool G's, excuse me, says that's why HBCUs should vote Trump. Yeah, he's the only president I remember that gave money directly to the HBCUs. They asked him for it, and he said sure. Obama didn't, and you know, and I'm gonna be frank here, and I've said this in previous live streams, and I've said this in some of my long form videos as well. I'm gonna repeat it here. Obama's not even black. I'll say he's black adjacent, but he's when I say black, I'm saying that he's not a foundational black American. On top of that, he's had no connection to the black community except when he was a community rights activist in Chicago. And he only did that to pad his resume. Let's be honest. But our so called first black president didn't give anything to the HBCUs. Trump did. Trump also did prison reform. So going back to KJ up there, you know, thanks, Bobby. Pascal says Bonjour de France. Comment ça va, Pascal? Carter the H's. Let's go, Brandon. It took me a while to actually understand that joke, but I get it now. Um, what's up, Mahal? Mrs. Contrarian is here, guys. My wife is moderating, so if people find themselves kicked out of the chat or timed out for saying something inappropriate, that will be because she's helping me do so. Conscious Moron says Harris 2024, no felons for president in America, right? Wrong. So, one, and I'm going to say this again and again, and I don't care how many times I repeat it, every president has been a criminal. Every president has been a criminal. Every president has been a criminal. And if you doubt my words, go take a course in poli sci. Go take a course in um, American history, which focuses on the American presidency. Or you can just click here on YouTube on Wisecrack. Wisecrack is a channel that talks about things dealing with social commentary, philosophy, and other things. And they themselves have shown that, yes, every president has been a criminal since the beginning, starting with George Washington. People dislike the fact that Trump was a real estate mogul. George Washington was a real estate mogul. On top of that, some of the land that he owned, he stole after the French and Indian Wars. And he was actively, he was actively running his businesses while he was still in office. On top of that, he owned slaves, and in a to um, to go against a law at the time in Pennsylvania, where because of the Quakers, they set up a time frame in which you had to release slaves after a certain amount of time of servitude working on Pennsylvania plantations. He simply moved his slaves to other plantations so that he wouldn't have to free them. So Lincoln, arguably our most beloved president, he he flooded the polls with his supporters illegally. And during the war, he locked up protesters and anyone who spoke against the law. Um, so and I can go into countless examples, but every American president has been a criminal. So I really don't care that Trump was convicted of a low grade felon based on him paying off a porn star. I don't care. The only crimes I care about presidents committing are war crimes. And to Trump's and and as far as Trump is concerned, he committed. So Susan says, I'll definitely be voting for a felon 100%. Here, here. She says, anybody here that's going to be voting Democrat, you better be looking things up because we're going to be living in the worst country than we're living in now. Yeah, they're not doing very well, Susan, with like letting like so for instance, right now the Biden administration has expedited immigrants to receive American citizenship. Gee, I wonder why, right? It, it's not even conspiratorial to say that they're expediting these citizenship in the hope that these people will align themselves with the Democrats. Um, TT 001524655 646 is taken from all Americans. Because you can too says y'all better um, Lauren to this boy. I I know I'm sure that's a typo. They say he's a good one. Appreciate it. God versus vote on merit, not on race. Absolutely. And let's and, and let's and let's just put this out here, right? Let's say I did want to vote on just purely race and identity. If I did that, I still wouldn't vote for her because she's not black. She's half East Indian and half Jamaican. Jamaicans have often not considered themselves black. They say, no, I'm Jamaican, you're black. Or they'll say, you're a Yankee. they, a lot of Caribbean folks and African folks and Afro Latinos don't consider themselves black until it's expedient for them to do so. Otherwise, they'll tell you what they are by nationality. They'll say, no, I'm from Panama. No, I'm from Nigeria. No, I'm from Barbados. Black Americans don't do that. We just say, hey, we're black or African American or whatever. But these tethers want to consider themselves black when they want our support. So even if we were to vote on race, which I think is a horrible idea, I still wouldn't vote for her because she's not actually black. Like I said, she didn't even talk about being black until she ran for office in 2020. Up until then, she was hailed as the first female Indian U.S. senator previously. And people say, well, she went to Howard University and became an AKA. So what? There are a lot of non-black people that go to Howard University. There are a lot of non-black women who join black sororities. And some of those guys usually go crazy over them when they do because it's kind of exotic to them to have like white or Asian people join these black fraternities and sororities. BGLOs, Black Greek lettered organizations. But yeah, there's been many non-black people within the so-called Divine Nine. So her going to an HBCU or joining the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority does not prove that she's black. Joseph says you like soft movies. Um, well, that's not the topic, Joseph, but I like the first three of them, first three or four of them. After that, I haven't watched them since. Um, Susan says Kamala is not black. Her father is Hindu and Irish. Her mother is South Indian. So her father is black adjacent. I'll say, Susan. Like he's not black. He's so when I say they're not. So when I say this, they're not black, Susan. I'm referring to foundational Black Americans, or sometimes also called the American descendants of slavery. Basically, these are all the black people who've came to America prior to 1860 and usually found themselves implanted into the American South. These are foundational Black Americans. And these are the ones who were referred to in a lot of American documents later on as the freedmen. And a lot of policies that went into place back in the 50s and 60s were in place for the freedmen or foundational Black Americans and saw them and instead saw those things going to immigrants and other non-black people. So that's what I mean when I say she's not black. She's not foundational Black American. I'll concede that her father has, um, Black African ancestry, but that doesn't make them Black American. And yes, her family is a mixed bag. Like I think on her father's side, one of their ancestors was a slave master. So A white slave master. Joseph says stop with the politics. You can get off this channel because this is what this topic is about. If this isn't for you, come back on another day. That's what this topic is about. Maybe you should do your due diligence and read what the topic is before you click on the live stream. Otherwise, get the fuck off my channel. Damien says red or blue, it doesn't matter who. If you're not for making America better and stronger in all fashions as one nation, then y'all could leave. LOL. I don't disagree. Jackie says new to the channel. Peace and blessings, family. Trump 2024. Thank you, Jackie. Appreciate it. Hope you come back to the channel. Rube says you're falling right in line and claiming immigrants are taking black people's resources. Blacks are intelligent and have incredible high-paying jobs as well, not just immigrant-type jobs. I'm not falling in line anywhere. I'm pragmatic. I know that the same sort of low-wage jobs, these are, some of you guys need to study economics. There are limited resources. There are not unlimited jobs out there for everyone. And yes, people are going to compete for those same jobs in the same space. For one, it is a threat to the black community when they're actually moving, when they actually take these immigrants and bus them to black communities in places like Chicago, in places in New York City. You're not going to tell me they're not competing for the same resources. They are competing for the very resources. On top of that, they give these people housing and financial stipends to buttress them living in these communities. I'm not playing into anything. I'm reporting on reality. Just because you don't like how reality looks because it doesn't fit your political ideology, I don't give a fuck. Like, frankly, I report on things as I see them happening in real time, not based on political ideology. This is why I'm independent, because you can't critically think on political issues if you are partisan to one party or another. I call out bullshit on both sides. I've called out bullshit on the Republican side. I've called out bullshit on the Democratic side. But what we're not going to do is play the game that where I'm suddenly playing into a narrative because it defeats your views on certain things. I mean, I'm sorry. Go take a class in microeconomics. There are limited resources in the same place and time. And when you have people vying for the same resources, it is a problem. And when you privilege one group over another, when they're not even Americans, that is a problem. Full stop. Robert D says, I ain't voting for a sourpuss pig. Then you're voting emotionally. I don't care. I don't care how the man looks. I don't care how he talks. I care about what he's going to do for me and for the black community. That's what I care about, Robert. I don't care about what he looks like or how he talks. You think a lot of people would have voted for Franklin D. Roosevelt if they knew that he was crippled at the time? He was a paraplegic. You think people would have voted for Thomas Jefferson if they knew he had a huge stuttering problem? I don't care. I don't care about such superficial things. You're talking emotionally. Like, you switch from not being able to prove your point about the whole Project 2025 thing being policy for Trump to saying then that it's going to influence them because the Heritage Foundation has a outsized influence on a Republican base. Cool, okay. Now you're going to, I'm just simply not going to vote for him because I don't like him. Okay, fine. If you don't like him, don't vote for him. That's that's completely that's completely your choice. Vote your interest. That's my point. Vote your interest. But if you're going to vote out of emotion, you're not being rational. This is a problem with democracy. Some people shouldn't vote. I'm sorry, some people shouldn't have the right to vote if they don't know how to vote rationally. This this is why a lot of young people are apathetic towards voting because they see irrational people with an outsized majority in the electorate. Maybe one of the ways to get around that would be ranked choice voting, or the more the more zany idea would be maybe to have weighted votes for people who can prove that they're politically informed. God versus Latinos for Trump, secure our borders. Thank you. Jackie says if people cannot see that the Most High spared Trump's life for a reason, then they are blind. Um, I mean, if that's what you take for motivation, that's fine. I won't say that the Most High spared him because someone did lose their life over it still, like an innocent man who was a first responder, a family man who was a Trump supporter who was at that rally, lost his life to this, um, to this idiot would-be assassin, right? So I still remember that someone did lose their life at that rally. Okay. Um, I wouldn't I wouldn't call that a miracle because what would have been a miracle is that no one got hurt. But it was fortuitous that Trump did turn his head at the time that it didn't go through. So Susan says until the courts made the decision to make it overturned, right? Robert D says you're joining the team of the Confederates. It makes zero sense. No, what makes zero sense is you don't know American history, Robert. If you knew American history, you would know that the Democrats were overwhelmingly the Confederates at the time. Did you not get that? Do you remember someone named Abraham Lincoln, who was a Republican, who freed the slaves, who led the Union? Before you say dumb shit, you should fact check it first. I mean, we all have ChatGPT nowadays. You can either use ChatGPT, or if you have Google like I do, you can use Gemini, which is their version of ChatGPT. It's a chat AI system. Run that through before you spew something that's patently false. The Democrats were overwhelmingly the Confederates back then. The Democrats were overwhelmingly white supremacists at the time, even after the Civil War. And there still exists a sizable portion of them in the South that are still white supremacists and racists. They call them now Dixiecrats because they're only Democrat in name, not in policy. But they still exist. But they were the overwhelming majority within the Confederacy, not Republicans. You should learn your history before you say dumb stuff like that. The Republicans were the ones who freed the slaves, who led the Union to victory. They're also ones who started the Reconstruction era that allowed black people to own land, to run for public office, and to vote. Learn your history. Jackie says Trump almost took a bullet for this country. True, true indeed. Conscious Moron says went to Howard. I think he said. I think he's saying the wench went to Howard. I think that's what he's trying to say. Josh Cullen says next year will be white. Watch. She'll be whatever is expedient for her. So who knows, Josh? Because you know there's something now called transracialism. So since she's multi-ethnic, yeah, she can pull from any of her ethnic ancestry when it's expedient. Susan says Trump all the way, baby. Robert, he says you can go back decades with her calling herself black. I don't care what she calls herself. I care what she actually is. She's not black. She's not black. She's not black. She's East Indian and Jamaican. She's not black. She's not foundational black American. I don't know what you are, Robert, but if you're not black, you cannot tell me whom I should and should not consider black. She's not black. She's East Indian and Jamaican. Jamaicans don't need to worry about their own fucking country. That place is a fucking shithole. I'm not on here lying. Anything I say, I've said this in every live stream. Anything that I say, you can fact check me on. And when I'm wrong, I'll admit it. I've done it before. It's called intellectual humility. So if I'm wrong, because as I understand that a person can be wrong or ignorant of almost anything, that's intellectual humility. Anyway, Godfrey says, I don't care what liberal loonies say about Trump. I'm still voting for him. Latinos for Trump. Melissa says, stupid lies. Good luck, bitter Betty. All right. Peace out. How am I lying? Look, you doubling down saying someone's lying or wrong doesn't prove a point. You need to take logic. If you're going to say someone is lying, someone is wrong, who does the onus of that belong to? The claimant or the disclaimant? If someone claims X and you claim Y, and you say that person A who claims X is false, where's the burden of proof? I've given my reasons for my claims. I've given my reasons. And I also said fact check me on it too. Anyone in this chat room can fact check me, not just you. You move the goalpost from one thing to another. You can't even be rational because you keep jumping from one thing to the next to try to prove a point that you can't prove. So you have to keep jumping from one thing to the other, thinking that people won't realize that you keep evading the issue by moving from one topic to another. You went from Project 2025 to Trump is a sourpuss to I'm supporting a party of Confederates to now I'm lying because you can't prove any of your points. Meanwhile, I, being a freaking nerd, discounted everything you said with counter evidence. You said they're the party of Confederates, forgetting the very fact that most of them were Democrats during the Civil War and even after the Civil War, that it was the Republicans who freed the slaves and led the Union and started the Reconstruction era. But I'm lying because you don't want, because you're too lazy to fucking fact check it. So God first is not lying at all. Josh Cullen says subscribe, y'all. Robert D says there's not enough time for primaries. Yes, there was. So here you go jumping into another thing. There was clearly enough time for primaries. Mind you, in other countries, they don't take 2 years for an election season. They may take like 2 months for their election cycle, like 2-3 months at tops. We're the only country that stretches out our election cycle for over like a year or two. There was clearly enough time to do a primary. By the time Biden said he was stepping down, because they finally had to admit what has been a talking point on the right for 4 years, that they kept gaslighting the American public about, that the man was suffering from dementia and cognitive decline. They kept saying he wasn't, but we saw it in real time. The man was falling asleep during the fucking debate. Political inside uh, insiders to the White House has said they have been holding back how bad his cognitive decline has been for the last few years from the public and from the DNC. So when he finally stepped down, because they had to admit that what people saw before their very fucking eyes, that he was suffering cognitive decline, that was the time for a primary. Besides that, people have been asking for a primary for over a year anyway. There was a huge contingent with base that said they didn't want him to run for a second term. They would instead prefer a primary. So, so by the very fact that people had already asked for a primary a year prior to this point where he finally stepped down, and the point where now it was open to whom would be the strongest candidate to take his place, that was the time for a primary. This was 2 months ago. We still have 4 months to go to the election. There was enough time for a primary. Again, in other countries, their election cycle might be 2 or 3 months, not 2 years. It was enough time. They didn't want to do it. They didn't want to do it. William Young says a lot of people don't like Trump supporters because of Trump policies, but those they love in danger. Josh says, "Do you deserve a coffee and a donut?" Appreciate it. People can buy me a coffee, and I do have some right now. I almost forgot I had this right here. I prefer iced coffee. Don't hate me. I will drink hot coffee sometimes too, but do prefer ice, especially the summertime. So, but like I said, if I'm wrong on something, I don't mind being called out on it. Let me know that I'm wrong, and I will admit it and change what I say. But he's not doing so. He's merely saying you're wrong and doubling down on it. Doubling down on saying someone is wrong is not evidence that that person is wrong. If you're gonna say someone is wrong, you have to actually like show them where they are wrong. Like I showed him where he was wrong. William says cutting taxes for the rich and services for the working class. uh, Robert D goes on to say, wouldn't even let someone like you rent a house from him. Are you sure about that? Do you remember also? First of all, yes, people keep trying to prove that point. Again, what does that have to do with being a president? We're talking about him as a private citizen, as a as a real estate mogul or property owner. Was that messed up? Maybe. I don't know the specifics of what happened with him denying certain people um, housing. But as a business owner, he can do that as long as he wasn't receiving federal like government subsidies. Then who cares? He can do what he wants as far as housing is concerned as a private citizen. On top of that, it was alleged that just because he didn't want his housing connected with things like Section 8 or whatever. I don't know if that was true or not, so I can't substantiate that. However, I will say what he did as a private citizen is not the same as president. He didn't do that when he was president. Moreover, you willfully forget the fact that he put up a black woman in one of his housing for free, for free, for free. Yes, I'm gonna use that Dr. Umar Johnson tactic of repeating things 3 times because it does actually work. But you you forget that he put up a poor black woman in his housing for free. So we can all just cherry pick information, but here's the thing: when you do that, it doesn't prove your point. When you're cherry picking information just to poison the well against someone. And I'm not lying about Kamala. I didn't even bring up that she's a hoe, but that's a different subject. But we can go there too if you want. Judge Joe Brown has brought it up, and several other people have. Um, and there's actual like fact. When she had that affair with Willie Brown, a married black man. So if you want to go there, we can go there. Hold on. First, I want to give a shout out to Skillet Water. Gave me the super chat. He said, join late, don't know what's happening here, but here you go. Appreciate it, Skillet Water. Thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate it a lot. And the topic today, Skillet Water, is why black men have been refusing to overwhelmingly support the Vice President Kamala Harris for her run for office as president this election. That's what the current topic is about. Appreciate it a lot, my friend. That's how you do it, guys. And Robert D, I'm being respectful, man, but you keep saying I'm lying, this and that. Show me the lie. If I'm saying something false, go ahead and show me where it's false. But we're not going to keep with this whole you're lying thing. You're being very emotional. And men aren't supposed to be emotional. Use reason, use evidence. Don't use emotional appeals. Emotional appeals do not work on me. I'm a very pedantic person. I'm a Vulcan, if you will. If we're not talking logically, what are we doing? Men should argue through reason and evidence, not through emotion. If I'm saying something false, show me where it's false. But simply doubling down, saying you're lying, you're lying, you're lying, doesn't support your point. You don't support a point by just doubling down on it. That's not how that works when it comes to reason. Now, if I say something false, show me why it's false. Give me reasons. Defend your argument, as we used to say in philosophy. Give me reasons, defend your views. But simply doubling down, saying you're lying, doesn't prove your point. It just makes you look emotional. William Young says Central Park 5 ads were disgusting, as was the housing discrimination case. Okay, we can get into that. So let's get into the Central Park 5 thing. that was a blight on Trump to have done that. I'm not going to even, I'm not going to, again, I'm a rational person. I'm not going to defend things that are indefensible. What I will say is he did that as a private citizen, and these were ads. He had no legal or political power to enforce his views through those ads. And it was later shown that these kids were exonerated of those crimes. So the the system did what it did and it corrected a wrong, right? The housing discrimination case. If you look, again, I'm not going to defend that. If you look into a lot of people who are real estate moguls, I'm pretty sure if you throw something at the wall, you'll find something unsettling about some of these real estate moguls. Trump is not unique in that. Again, I'm not defending what he did. However, I will say a lot of these real estate folks might have some sketchy things in the background. I can't defend that. What I will say is those things happen as him as a private citizen. But let's go back to him being a president. As president, did he do or or try to do anything in office that would directly harm black people? And I will argue no he didn't. His policies weren't set up to hurt black people. Guess whose were while they were in office? Biden, Joseph R. Biden. When he came into the US Senate in the 70s, he worked with a white supremacist to prevent the busing of black children to white schools, working with the white supremacist Strom Thurmond. In 1988, he authored the 1988 crack bill, which mandated that crack and no other drug at the time, only crack cocaine, receive mandatory federal sentencing. No other drug, not heroin, not powder cocaine, not PS, not PCP, not LSD, not any of these other things. Only crack cocaine, because you know why? Because crack cocaine was in the low these black ghettos of the time, these urban black communities. Then in then in 1994, he co-authored the 1994 crime bill, which sent tens of thousands of black people into prison for for low-level crimes. And he eulogized the KKK leader Robert C. Byrd at his funeral and called him a mentor and a friend. So, uh, A. Roy says we all as Americans need to come together, left wing, right wing, both connected to the same bird. I wish people would see that, A. Roy. That's why I'm an independent, bro. Because, like I said, people keep accusing one side of one thing and the other side of the other. They both do the same thing. The thing is, hey, let's that's as you put it, this bird we riding on. We need to steer to our own interests, or we can just all fall together. William says, pretty sad that our children and grandchildren have to pay for Trump giveaway to 1%. That's not true, bro. That's not really true. Ta- the economy has been worse under Biden. Interest rates were around 4.5% under Trump until the pandemic took a blight on the economy. Interest rates now are like 7, 8%. Well, they just started going down now. But up until like 3, 4 months ago, interest rates were like 7, 8%. 7, 8%. That's crazy. Like in my line of work, I couldn't even offer people to refinance their homes or anything because it would balloon their rate. During the Trump administration, we I was able to work with licensed loan officers to get people down to like 3.25% fixed rate. Now it's like 7%. So who's really hurting at this time? I will tell you, it's the lower and middle classes who are hurting right now under Biden. People are doing fairly well under Trump. And Susan says, no, she's not black. No, I completely agree with you, Susan. Completely agree with you. Robert D says Trump goes around praising Confederate generals and longing for that time. When have you seen him? First of all, Trump is not a history buff. So when have you even seen him praise a Confederate general? Now you're just making stuff up. Again, you're just trying to poison the well against him. If you don't like the man, that is fine. But I'm not going to let people put falsehoods on my stream and it won't be challenged. You're not, what you're saying isn't true. He has not been praising Confederate generals. He's not even a history buff to praise Confederate generals. What you may have seen is that a lot of military installations around the U.S. have been named after Civil War generals, Civil War era generals, many of them from the Confederacy, because many of them were considered some of the finest military leaders of the time. Because unfortunately, at that time, in the in the antebellum South, they had some of the best military um, some of the best military institutions at the time. So they had some of the best generals to come out of those institutions, and some of our army installations were named after them. They're being renamed now, but a lot of people don't like that, including people in the army, because we don't feel like relearning the names of these military institutions. Like we still refer to them as Fort Lee and Fort Bragg and Fort Knox and Fort Eustis and all these other places. Josh Cullen says I didn't like FDR because he gave the banks power. That's fair. I don't like what he did to the Japanese during the Japanese internment, and I think he was in office a little too long. That man won 4 elections, 4 presidential elections, and he died in his fourth term. And at the beginning of his fourth term, they, I mean, so much so they started calling him King Roosevelt. Chad Reed says someone is calling her a hyena. Really, just don't vote for her. Well, I haven't called her a hyena, but I've called her other things. Unless you're referring to someone in the chat room, but I haven't seen anyone use the term hyena yet. There's many things of which she can be called. But yeah, you're right. But you are right, Chad. Like you don't have to name, you don't have to result in insults and name calling. You could just simply say, I'm not voting for that person. Sorry, I had to reconnect, guys. Hope everyone's still here. Robert D says she is part black and part Indian. That's okay to be. Maybe you consider her black. I don't. I'm foundational black American, Robert. I don't know what you are, but Jamaicans are not foundational black Americans. They're not. They they aren't part of our culture. They haven't shared our legacy of coming to America in 1619. They've had similar struggles in Jamaica, but That's that's their thing in Jamaica. They need to work that out with Britain. The the Jamaicans, they need to work that out with the British. That's not our concern. Stay out of our business. And especially when she says, I'm not going to do anything for black people. I don't believe in cash reparations and all this sort of stuff. All right, cool. That's fine. But hey, I'm not going to vote for you and you're not black. She's not black. And she does not take the political interest of black people. I could I for, I could leave aside the fact that she's not actually black. What I won't leave aside is the fact that she has not done anything for black people in office as VP, nor as U.S. Senator, nor as state Senate, nor as a state's attorney in California, or as the Attorney General in California. She's done things to hurt black people while she was in office. For instance, keeping 1,500 black men, black American men, locked up in prison beyond their prison term, denying the release of a black man on um, who was going to receive the death penalty, refusing to release him until she was mandated until she was ordered by the courts to do so. After he had been exonerated, and she had refused to release that man, a black man, until the courts ordered her to do so. Or she hasn't helped black women either. She she doubled down on a truancy law in California. They were locking up black women for when it for not putting their children in school. How is if they're already working so much they can't get ensure that their children are in school? How does it help locking them up? How is that going to ensure that the kids go to school? So even if she were black, she's done things in office that's hurt black people, both black men and black women. Fuck her. Williams says dividing is intentionally to manipulate the electorate is gross. Well, the electorate is already divided, my friend. It's my position again for for everyone is vote according to your interests. Don't vote according to party. Don't vote just based on racial identity. The older folks fall for these tricks. And like I said, shout out to the younger people who have seen through this bullshit and said, no, we're going to vote based on our interests. And their interests may not be my interests, but at least they're voting based on those interests instead of voting best voting based on party loyalty or based on racial identity. We voted based on racial identity in mass to elect uh, President Obama. He did nothing for black people while in office for 8 years. So Robert D says you're sitting there lying, calling her a bitch and lying about her. Where are the lies, my friend? Again, you can't defeat a claim by simply saying someone is lying. You have to show them where they are lying. You have no argument. So all you can say is you're lying. You're being very emotional. You need to get that out your system. I suggest you maybe hit the gym or take a few introductory lessons in MMA or boxing because you're being very emotional. Men shouldn't be emotional. Men should act with reason and purpose, not out of emotion. Williams says deregulation is leading to monopolistic price gouging. There hasn't. I don't see how that. Well, I mean that could be the case, William, but I don't see how that's the case within the last 4 years. The 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 Biden administration has not been about deregulation. That's usually something that's accused of the Republican side. So it would you'll be hard pressed to prove that that's what's been happening recently for why food is so expensive, why gas is so expensive, why the cost of living has gone up because of deregulation. Because there has not been a significant amount of deregulation in the past 4 years. But I mean, I'm open to that being a possibility from the previous administration with Trump, or maybe even before him with Obama. But I can't say within the last 4 years that deregulation has caused the cost of living to go up. So A. Roy says politics are an illusion of choice. They all work together. Their kids go to the same schools. They all go to the same parties. Now, that part is quite true. They bicker on camera in front of us for us to see them going at each other. But yes, and if people know the Washington Beltway, all these people live in the same communities. Their kids go to the same schools. They go to the same they go to the same get-togethers. They often even have the same campaign donors for both the Democrats and Republicans. They often uh, have the same corporate donors. That's quite true. On top of that, some of the bickering they do on camera, like when you see them in Congress going at each other, a lot of that's just theatrics. Arnold Schwarzenegger let us know that himself. He actually has a, I think it's still on Netflix. He has a uh, documentary of his life on Netflix. He talks about when he was governor of California, that a lot of the bickering he did, because he was a Republican, right? But he was a moderate Republican, and he often fought it out with the Democrats, um, who ran most of California. And he was saying that often the case this was just done for the cameras, but off camera, they had already worked out a deal that they were going to implement, but they needed to show their constituencies that they were fighting for their interests. But off camera, they had already probably worked out most of the time. They've already worked out a deal, because either he would reach out to their people or they would reach out to him, and they would come to some sort of resolution. But for the but for the cameras, like, they would show them bickering while in office to look like they're fighting for their constituency interests. It's, Robert D. kind of person is just going to sit there lying, prove the lie, like, well, not prove the lie, show, like, use reason, defend your views. You're a fucking adult. At least I assume you're an adult. If you're an adult, be an adult. Use your reason. Defend your views. Simply saying someone is lying because you can't counter argue them shows that you're intellectually immature. And to sit there and keep debating with you is like mental masturbation. It's pointless. You have no tools in which to use to defeat my views. So you can just keep saying lying, lying, lying. At some point, I'm just going to ignore you because you have no credible argument to make. Mafia Gorilla says, "Are you from Jamaica, my bro?" Nope. Born and raised in America. Robert D says, was a prosecutor. Who was a prosecutor? Are you referring to Kamala Harris or are you referring to yourself? Was a prosecutor who prosecuted violent criminals first and also started a program to help people not commit crimes. Okay, that's very vague. Whom was a prosecutor? Are you referring to Harris? Are you referring to yourself? Are you referring to someone else? What program did they use to help people not commit crimes? Williams says conservative policies have led to unaffordable health care and getting rid of PTO and sick time. Well, we can have that argument, but con- that's not directly relevant to what we're saying here, William. But hey, I'll acknowledge that the conservative policies have not always been the best. What I think we can agree on is that when you that neither ideology, whether you're talking about conservative ideology or liberal ideology, is the end all and be all for the country in terms of its best interests. Sometimes there's some policies that are better that are conservative, and there's some policies that are better that are liberal or progressive. I think we have to take it on a case by case basis. Um, Mafia says I'm from Nigeria. Okay, well, cool. Anyway, says drop your J, pay my boy. Huh? Sorry, I didn't know what you were referring to. Okay, so here comes one of these little idiotic black women coming to defend their queen. You sound This is Lavonda Dorsey here. Mind you, I had to unhide her comment because YouTube decided that this wasn't worthy of us seeing. So I'm showing it for you guys here. Just so you can show just so you can see the shaming, insults, guilt, and the need to be right that Kevin Samuels said about black women who can't be accountable for their own behavior. So I'm going to read what this twit says. And this is Lavonda Dorsey. She says, "You sound so stupid. How much did they pay you? You really need to be educated. You really need to be educated." And these typos are hers and hers alone. So anyway, on you really need to be educated. On slave, you really need to be educated on slavery. I think you need to be educated on how to make a grammatical sentence, Lavonda. And what period of slavery are we talking about? We're talking about American slavery, right? I presume you're referring to American slavery. I think you need to be educated on it because where did I make any sort of factual misstatement on slavery? On top of that, let's get this out here. In every Throughout human civilization, people have been enslaved. This is not unique to black people. We need to we need to stop acting like this only happened to us. This happened to almost every race on the face of the earth at some point in time. You need to be educated on history. You need to be educated on basic grammar usage. You need to make stop making unwarranted assumptions. Where am I being paid to make these accusations? Chad Reed says, if you have a job, then you will be able to do what they want with you. Remember that. I'm not sure what that means. uh, Williams says, many have review boards, etc., which get approved amongst racial lines. Florida got in trouble for that. Okay, I'll I'll concede that. William says he gave them the 10-year funds in 1 year. Misappropriation of public funds is not unique to one one political party. Democrats do it too, a lot. Do we remember that mayor in Detroit? Do we remember the county executive of Prince George's County? Both black Democrats misappropriating funds. Do you remember? Do we not know of Tiffany Henyard out in Illinois going through it right now with FBI investigations because of all the shady stuff that she's done? Tiffany Henyard. Do we not remember that prosecutor that was going after Trump in Fulton County with all the bullshit she did with her boyfriend, whom she hired to be the attorney to go after Trump? We not remember that. We don't remember the misappropriation of campaign funds she did. What about the black Democratic woman from Baltimore? And I can keep going on. Robert, he says now you're lying about HVC. What is HVC? He said, "Wow, you're really bought and paid for, aren't you? You're an emotional bitch, aren't you?" Sack up. Like, seriously, you need to go do some boxing or something. You're a very emotional little bitch. You don't have one, you have not had one concrete critique of me that was not an emotional appeal. You have not used evidence against me. You have not used data against me. You have not stated any any sort of statistics against me for anything that I've said politically, historically, etc. You've been an emotional bitch. You need to sack up. How much am I being paid? Does it look like I'm getting paid to say these things? If I did, I would actually have to drop it in the YouTube live stream that this is a paid promotion. William says normally the inflation adjusts yearly. Okay. Chad says HBCUs get money every year, just like other colleges. Not when we're talking about not when we're talking about private institutions. So that's not exactly true. Like some of these private HBCUs rely on their alumni. The only like money they get would be through like for like for their federal financial aid programs they can give to students, but they don't get money from the government the way like that was an actual thing that Trump did that was not done before, at least not in a long time, when he gave money to the HBCUs. So that's not true. I wish it were, but it's not. This is why most of these HBCUs tend to be quite underfunded, unless you go into like one of the best ones, like Howard University or Morehouse and Spelman. So you see, you're dinging Obama for not being black. Is Trump black? No, Trump is not black, and nor is Obama. His mother's white. His father was Kenyan, a Kenyan immigrant. He's not black American. He didn't even he wasn't even part of the black community. He lived in Hawaii. Just not no black people there except for in the military. Most of the black people in Hawaii are in the military. It's mostly a bunch of wealthy white and Japanese people with a bunch of poor native Hawaiians and Filipinos. Not very many black people there, very little. On top of that, he also spent time living in Indonesia when his mom remarried his stepfather and they moved to Indonesia. That's why he was able to fluently speak Bahasa Indonesian language when he was president and he went over there because from his time living there, he learned the language and became fluent in Bahasa Indonesian language. When he went to school, he went to Occidental College in California, which is a small white liberal arts college. Then transferred to Columbia University, Ivy League school in New York City. After he graduated, he became a community activist in Chicago. That was the first time he dealt with actual black people. And then he went on to Harvard Law, married Michelle Obama because it looks good for his career to be married to a black woman. Not saying he didn't really love her. Of course, I think he genuinely does and did, but it became very politically expedient for him to have a black woman under his arm as he launched his political career. She's black. Michelle is. He's not. William says because he gave the next 10 years and inflation picked up due to Trump, HBCUs got less money. I don't follow that. I, and I think I think that's a, I don't think that follows reasonably either. I think that's a non sequitur. That has nothing to do with Trump giving HBCUs money. He gave them money. This was not something that comes out of the. This is not something that comes out of the the government budget every year. That does not happen. This was actually money he set aside to give to HBCUs. That has the previous presidents have not done that. So I'm not sure what you're referring to, William. I think you need to stop. I think you might be confusing the money that Trump gave to HBCUs with the subsidizing of the federal financial aid programs that all these colleges receive, which is I think what you're referring to. Neha Agarwal says hi. M. Das is kettle calling the pot black Jason. Okay. Robert D says Trump isn't black. If someone has to be black for you to support them, how are you supporting Trump? I didn't say that. You're you're being emotional because I never said that. I didn't. I've if you've listened to the beginning of the stream, I've argued against voting for people for racial identity. I said vote. I've said it at least a dozen times, and I'll repeat it again. I said vote your interests. Don't vote party. Don't vote racial identity. I've said it a number of times. You hear what you want to hear because you've already like decided what you're going to believe. That's not my problem at this point. That's your problem. What I did say is if if people were if and only if people were going to vote on racial identity, then neither one of these people were black. Harris was not black. Obama wasn't black. That's what I said. But I've manifestly said several times you should not vote based on racial identity. You should not vote based on party. You should vote based on interests, on policy. That's what I've said. What I have said is that she's misleading black Democrats by using her racial identity to gain votes. Susan says nobody deserves reparations. We have all been through SHIT and through the years. So I get that, Susan. So my point about that is, what I'm saying is, if that, so I'm saying if that's what a person's personal interests are, Susan, like if that's what they care about, then that's whom they should, then they should vote on a candidate that will support that. That's all I'm saying. Do I support it? Yes, I do. However, there's a caveat to that. I believe also that African countries also owe Black Americans cash reparations, and I think we should start there. But that's a topic for a different day. I want to stick to this. We're gonna talk about the finer points of reparations on another day for another topic. But I have talked about this before on a different live stream, where I've argued that part of the reparations that Black Americans are owed comes from the African countries themselves. But that's another topic. Um, I've already said your name, so I'm not saying that again. If you're gonna ask me to say your name, drop a super sticker, or put it in the super chat. Chad says HBCUs always receive money. Stop lying. Again, you guys gonna have to learn to use your tools of reason. If I'm saying something patently false, show it. Don't say, "Oh, you're lying." They do not. What money are you referring to? There are money allotted for different reasons, and you guys are being disingenuous when you say that. Again, I've clarified. I said yes. All colleges receive subsidies for financial aid purposes, for federal financial aid, and some states also give subsidies to these state colleges for state financial aid. But that's not what we're referring to. The money that Trump gave to the HBCUs was for the schools themselves, not just for financial aid programs. And how much these schools receive in financial aid depends on other factors as well, depending on their like the number of their undergraduate population, how many people at those schools require federal student aid, because at higher tier schools, less people require federal student aid than at lower tier schools. So let's be let's be clear here. Robert D says Trump is Scottish and German. I never. Again, you're being stupid, and I'm just gonna call it out point blankly. When have I ever argued that Trump was black? Chat, everybody in chat, everyone in the chat right now, have I said any time in a stream that Trump was black? Have I ever argued that? Shay Boogie says, Robert, this has nothing to do with race and everything to do with policies. Thank you. Jesus Christ says, bro, looking like a young Denzel Washington. That's what one of my exes said. I don't think so. Robert D says this has a lot to do with race if one of the candidates is an avowed racist. Again, so which one are we talking, or is the avowed racist, Robert? Again, okay, let's concede to your point, all right? So this is how we work, this is how we do things in philosophy. This is called a reductio ad absurdum, when you reduce an argument to its logical consequences, which lead to a contradiction or an absurdity. Let's concede to your point. Trump as a racist or a bigot. But was that while he was in office, or was that as a private citizen? What did he do in office, like, to harm black people? I'm waiting. Let's hear what policies he actually instituted to hurt black people while in office. Did he, as a private citizen, say or do things that would lead to people thinking he was a bigot? Okay, let's say he did. The Central Park 5 ads that he took out in the New York Times paper, or the housing discrimination issues. Let's concede to you on that. How does that hurt the black community in total? And and what does that have to do with him when he was president? Guess who was an avowed racist? And I've already said this in the stream earlier, and I'm going to say it again because there's some people listening who haven't heard this earlier. Joseph R. Biden Jr. when he came to the U.S. Senate in the 70s, and yes, that's how long he's been in the fucking office, in public office since the 70s, and he's been running for president since 1988 at least. When he came into office in the 70s, he worked with white supremacist Strom Thurmond to prevent the busing of black children to white schools. Even Harris talked about this back in 2020 during the Democratic primaries at the time. And it doesn't stop there. In 1988, he authored the crack bill that was put into law, which gave federal mandatory sentencing for anyone convicted of possession of crack cocaine, even if it was a minute amount. No other drug at the time, no other substance, only crack cocaine, not heroin, not PCP, not LSD, not powder cocaine, not steroids, not MDMA, none of these other things, just crack cocaine. You know why? Because crack cocaine was being used in urban black communities. In 1994, he co-authored the 1994 crime bill, which sent thousands of black men to federal prison for low-level crimes, to which he apologized back in like 2020, 2021. Sorry guys, the smoke alarm's going off. Someone is cooking and burning shit. um, give it a minute or two. But anyway, and it didn't stop there. Then he also worked with the Clintons when they were doing this crime bill to label all young black men as super predators. And he eulogized the KKK leader, Robert C. Byrd, at his funeral and called that man a mentor and a friend. So, but Trump is the racist. Okay, but Trump didn't do anything to hurt the black community. But good old Uncle Joe Biden did all these things, but he's not the racist. Let's see. Whom do I prefer? The bigot who's the private, who was racist in his personal life, or the so-called liberal Democrat who used systemic racism to hurt the black community for over 40 years. Okay, continue on. Shay says, Robert, why is he a racist? Because the TV says so. Um, Susan says, not in all states. Some states, once you get out, you still cannot vote. That's true. So, guys, she's referring to my earlier comment to KG, that many people, once they come out of prison, still cannot vote. That is true, Susan. However, not everyone who's in prison is a felon. That's another problem. So, for instance, here in Maryland, Susan, uh, the way the sentencing, like the way crimes go here is weird. Like, you can have people who receive a low level felony and only serve like 1 or 2 years in prison. Like, well, like that felony may only carry like 1 or 2 years sentence, but there are misdemeanors in Maryland that can carry up to 10 years in prison. See what I'm saying? So, um, just because someone's coming out of prison doesn't mean they're an ex-felon. So, so someone who's only convicted of a misdemeanor, they will have their rights, their voting rights, returned to them. And here in Maryland, especially, felons can vote as well once they're done with all their sentencing, which includes like parole and probation. So, but you're right, that's not in every state. But um, I don't know what state his penitentiary was, in what state it was located, but most states nowadays, they will return voting rights to those ex-felons when they return from prison. And again, I can't even say if he's a felon or not, because like I said, there are states in which you might serve a longer sentence for a misdemeanor than a felony, because that might have been the deal their public defender worked out, is that they they pled down to a misdemeanor that carries a higher time, that carries a higher sentencing than getting a felon, which might have been a lesser sentence but has higher legal ramifications. That's a topic for another day too, and I think that's kind of messed up. William says he believes he's above the law and a rampant narcissist. So again, I'm going to invoke the fairness maximum here, William, and say that most presidents think they're above the law because every president has been a criminal since the very first one. All of them have committed crimes while in office. This is why they've always enjoyed some level of partial immunity. But it wasn't until this year that the Supreme Court actually clarified on what they have immunity and on what they don't. But they have always enjoyed some partial immunity to crimes while in office. And as far as rampant narcissism, I think, let's be honest, to think that you are in a position where you think you can run the entire country and have the highest political office on the face of the earth, is that takes a little bit of narcissism on the point of any person who thinks they can run for such a high office. Now, is he more so than others? Possibly. I'm not going to armchair diagnose him and say that he has a narcissistic personality disorder. Uh, well, according to DSM-5, they don't call these personality disorders anymore. But in any case, is he a bit narcissistic? Yeah. Wasn't Biden though? A man who who originally said he's going to be a one-term president and then decided, no, I need to be in for a second term to keep Trump out of office, and that and for some reason thought that he was the best candidate to do so. That's a bit narcissistic. Or a man, and not to mention he's been running for office since the 80s. What disqualified him actually back in the 80s was because they found out that he uh, lied about his educational background. You guys can look that up. Again, anything that I say on this chat, I've said this before, anything I say in these streams or in other streams or in other videos, you can always fact check me on it. I welcome it. Jesus Christ says Trump could end the Ukraine war. Possibly. That's a quagmire. One of the 3 proxy wars that Biden has gotten us into right now. Susan says there are so many black people supporting President Donald J. Trump. It is, and that's, Susan is right. There are a lot of black people, like, and it's not, and so everyone thinks it's just the so-called black Republican sellout types that are supporting Trump, and that's not true. A lot of people supporting Trump are people who have who are not politically savvy. Like, there's a lot of people in the hood who are voting for Trump. Like, I stated this before in a previous live stream. I'm in the gym, and some little hood booger comes up to me and my friend while we're working the bench press, and just starts talking about Trump and why he wants to support him, all this sort of stuff. And we're like, yeah, cool, but we're trying to work out, we're trying to work in our sets here. But there's a lot of black people in every social strata that is supporting Trump. You have people in the lower classes, urban environments who are supporting him. There's people in the middle income areas that are supporting him, and there's people of the higher income and wealthy who are supporting him in the black community, all social strata. So it's true. And like I said, overwhelmingly, Kamala's not going to get the black man to support her. Half of them are either not going to vote, and then the others are going to either vote for her or vote for Trump. And a lot of them are going to vote for Trump because a lot of them, because of their own personal issues, dealing with. And so I'm gonna keep it a complete buck here. I'm gonna keep it 100. A lot of black men don't want to vote for Kamala Harris because they remind them of some of the black women they had to deal with in their lives. And I'm being completely honest about that. If you dealt with disrespectful black women your whole life, you're probably not going to be inclined to want to vote for one. So I'm keeping it a buck. For some of you, like, oh, what does that mean? When I say keep it a buck, I'm saying I'm being perfectly frank about why some black men don't want to vote for her. A lot of them don't like what she represents. She represents some of the worst aspects of black women to them. These overeducated women who use their status against these men. These women who take no interest in our personal well-being, but then expect our support when they need it. Shay says, last I checked, he has been around black people. Absolutely, he's been around black people. Like, people forget, before he ran for office, before he started challenging Obama on his, and I'll admit that Trump was wrong on this when he was challenging Obama on his citizenship. But before he started challenging Obama on his citizenship and decided he was going to run for office, the black community kind of liked him. Like, a lot of people watched his reality show on TV, and he had been lauded by hip hop musicians for decades. I remember him in a Mace video. The rapper Mace. He was in one of his videos. Um, so the whole antipathy towards him now has been kind of manufactured. Cool G says that William Young lies. um, Robert D says everyone knows him and will speak about it. Says he's a racist. Again, I conceded to your point to say that okay, he was a racist, but how did that hurt black people when he was in office? That's what I challenge you on. Show me policies that he instituted to hurt black people while in office, where I can point to what Biden did as a U.S. senator and what he's done as president with his mismanagement of the immigration crisis that is hurting black people, letting these people come into black communities and take their resources. The fact that he and then not to mention that he reneged on his campaign promises back in 2020. He said that he would wipe out the student debt of black people going to historically black colleges and universities, HBCUs. He reneged on that campaign promise. This was a separate promise from the stuff that he said he was going to do about student loans in general. So the stuff he said about student loans in general, he was going to wipe out some of that debt, was a complete different campaign promise to what he did when he was in Georgia and said that he was going to wipe out student loan debt for students going to HBCUs. That was a separate campaign promise he completely reneged on. Moreover, he refused to sign to look into doing a anti-black racist hate crime bill, but gave one to Asians after just 1 year of them getting their asses kicked during the pandemic. They got their asses kicked for a year, and they immediately signed that into law. And Harris was right there with him, eagerly like supporting him in doing that. But both of them, when she was asked, she was like, "I'm not doing something this going to only benefit black people." She said that out of her own mouth. You can Google it. You can find it here on YouTube. But she was gleeful when showing Biden signing that anti-Asian crime hate bill. I don't care about how people feel about lives. I care about how they use their influence while in office. Susan said, no, he's not racist. She's saying racist. She said, no, he's not racist. And he did have an aunt in the South Boston projects in Massachusetts because she was. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. Let me not confuse what Susan was saying. She was like, no, he's not. And he did have an aunt in the South Boston projects in Massachusetts. And he left her there because she was black. Oh, yeah, she's not referring to Trump, guys. I'm sorry. I was misreading that. Please, as you were, as we say in the Army. Toto Payne Diaz says Kamala knows political jizz. Yeah, ask Willie Brown. Josh says, LOL, how many dudes besides Trump got with a porn star? Well, I haven't. Well, I dated someone who was in Playboy, if that counts, but she wasn't a porn star. But yeah, he's done things that actually most hip hop artists would be like, yeah, that would be stuff to brag about. Like, yeah, I fucked a porn star. Yeah, I made millions off this real estate without, paying paying all these taxes to the government. Like that would be stuff people would brag about doing, right? Especially like in the hip hop community, like these would be things to brag about. I, I don't get your point, William. You're saying John Doe 174 got 47A, Katie Johnson, Trump flying on Epstein's plane right now for campaign is bad optics though, really bad. What do you, how is he flying on Epstein's plane right now? What do you what are we talking about? Right now? Or are you referring to when he actually visited Epstein? I don't. How is he flying? He's not flying on Epstein's planes right now. I don't get what you're saying, and I'm pretty sure most of us don't either. Coogee said they LOL. They act like Trump stole out their house, right? Like they act like they're talking about housing discrimination and stuff like that that happened to us, a select group of people, and trying to make this something about all of us. Like, and this was before he was in office. This was as a private citizen when he was a real estate mogul and entrepreneur. Trickle down doesn't work. We're not talking about trickle down economics. That's a complete different subject. You guys need to stop moving the goalposts. Like, I get it, you're passionate, but if you keep moving from one thing to the next, it doesn't prove your point. That doesn't work in rational discussion. That may work in that may work for high school level debates, but that's not going to work here. Like you completely like changing the subject to something else, or as we say, moving the goalposts. Like trickle down economics has nothing to do with what we're currently discussing. And I've never defended so-called trickle down economics or what's called supply side economics. I've never defended that. There can be a defense for supply side economics, but I'm not doing that here. That's not really the topic. DRK voices they don't convict every criminal. Most judges are Democrats because there's low accountability and corruption is encouraged. That's not true. Most judges are not Democrats. An overwhelming amount of them are um, many many of the judge appointees over the last several years have been Republicans. So that's not true. And even if it were true that most judges are Democrats, it doesn't necessarily follow that that results in low accountability and corruption is encouraged. So again, I told you guys I'm going to be fair. So if someone says something false on the political right as well, I'm going to call it out. Like I'm fair and balanced. Like if someone calls something false on the left, I'm gonna call it out. If someone calls something false on the right, I'm gonna call it out. Most judge most judges either elected to office or appointed to office are not Democrats. Also, um, that wouldn't follow that from that fact, if it were true, that leads to low accountability and corruption amongst these judges. I think there would be other factors involved if that were the case. The low accountability. Like first of all, we would have to establish that there actually is low accountability and corruption. This like widespread. It definitely happens, but is it widespread? I can't say. I'm not in the. I'm That's beyond my pay grade. I, I wouldn't be able to establish that. But assuming that there is, there will be a lot of factors involved, not just what party that those judges are affiliated with. Robert D says you were kissing the butt of racists is ridiculous. You trying to be Candace Owens? No, you're just an emotional bitch, and we're not going to keep circling the wagon here. You have brought nothing new to this discussion. You just keep saying the same thing over and over because you're too intellectually immature to have the tools of reason to argue your points in a coherent manner. So you want to keep making these fallacies. You keep making these ad hominem arguments, these non sequiturs. Keep begging the question, or petitio principii arguments. You try to poison the well against this person whom you don't like instead of just saying, hey, I don't like this person, I'm not going to vote for him. Then you accuse me of being paid off. Like, grow the fuck up. That guy says, facts, cool G. He don't care about our houses. He has a full skyscraper and all. Right. He has multiple homes. That's funny. Shay Boogie says, Robert, I'm just going to take my chances with the so-called racists because the economy was better when he was in office. And that was my point from the very beginning, Shay. If you were watching from the beginning, that was my point. Was I'm voting because people asked, so I don't know if it was Robert D or if it was someone else, but they asked me why am I voting for him, and I clearly stated because because I support his position on the economy and on immigration, which affects black people. That was my view. That was my position from the very beginning of this live stream when I was asked why am I supporting Trump, because of because I support his policies on the economy and on immigration. That was my point. Robert D says the economy was not better. Trump rode. I'm gonna correct this for him. Rode Obama's cocktails until he was faced with his first challenge, which was COVID, and he wet the bed. Did he though? COVID affected the entire world. The entire world. And whatever we did or didn't do for COVID was by Anthony Fauci. He let director of the NIH, Anthony Fauci, lead the call on how to handle COVID. So did Biden. Both of them let Anthony Fauci lead the call on how to handle the COVID pandemic. It affected everyone worldwide. And it wasn't started here. It was started in Wuhan, China, where China still lies and say they only had 4,600 people who died of it in a nation of 1.2 billion people. Meanwhile, we're a nation of 330 million people and had over 1 million people die. So we know they're lying just based on the numbers. And it affected our economy. Like, we put into place things to fix the economy because we were facing an economic depression. Rates had jumped. Banks were about to falter. the economy was at the breaking point. So the Federal Reserve rushed in to start pumping money ridiculously to stave off this economic crash. Trump had nothing to do with that. If anything, you could blame him for putting too much reliance on Anthony Fauci, the same way Biden put too much reliance on Anthony Fauci. And the economy was better. I work in the financial service sector. Anyone in the financial service sector will tell you that the economy was better under Trump than under Biden. Again, there's a big difference between having a 3.25 fixed interest rate and a 7% fixed interest rate. Trump lost a net of 7 million jobs. What jobs? And if we're talking again about COVID, you can't blame him for something that happened outside of our nation's control, our government's control. That's not reasonable. Dr. K. Void says it perfectly. He says, Robert D., you are a diluted dude. Deluded dude, he means deluded. Susan also says, Robert D., that was because of COVID, buddy. Look things up. Rube says, it's like talking to a wall, Robert D. They can't handle facts. Oh, we can handle facts. Robert D. can't handle facts. Whenever people throw facts at him, all he can say is he becomes like a petulant child and says, oh, you're lying. That's not how we discuss things as rational adults. We don't say, when we can't defeat someone's point, oh, you're lying. A rational person just says, you know what? I concede that. You may be right. Or I'll have to do more research on that because I don't know myself. But maybe you're right. I've done that within this chat. I've said to people, you know what? You may be right. With William Young, he brought up something, and I was like, you know what? You might be right on that. I don't know. And so did someone else brought up something. I was like, you know what? You could be right about that. Lavonda Dorsey says, where did this ignorant fool come from? Shut up, bitch. You're the one with the name Lavonda. Go take your ghetto ass somewhere else. All your shaming, insults, guilt, and the need to be right, go to fuck somewhere else. Rest in peace to Kevin Samuels, who put you dumb bitches on blast. Get the fuck off my channel. Robert D says, I'll trumpet good for us talking. Okay, whatever he's trying to say. Maybe you should run your comments through a grammar checker first. You're trying to rush out your comments so fast to try to prove a point that they're coming out ungrammatical. Here's the next ungrammatical comment. Howard University is a black university. Huh? I think you mean Howard University is a black university. Yes, Howard University is an HBCU. If you don't know that, you don't know shit. I don't even think, honestly, I don't even think you're a black American. To be perfectly frank, I don't think Robert D is a foundational black American. If he is black, he's probably like from the Caribbean or Africa or somewhere, but he's not black American. I don't believe so. Yes, Howard University is an HBCU that's been around since the late 1800s. My father was a professor at Howard University. It is a HBCU. Dumbass. Shay says Robert gas was low. Rent was too. Illegals weren't running rampant, terrorizing the neighbors. Right. They just caught the they just caught the guy who raped a woman here in Maryland and was flew to some other states. Williams says you see the leader of the Heritage Foundation bragging he wrote many of Trump's executive orders. Did he? What I did see is that this so-called leader of the Heritage Foundation stepped down. I did see that a few days ago. And what executive orders? He wrote Trump's executive orders? You mean they took inspiration from his ideas for his Trump's executive orders? Because how? Never mind. Susan says, Robert D, can you please look things up before putting lies out there? Thank you. Thank you, Susan. Robert D says you can go back for decades. And also I want to acknowledge this. How many live streams will you go where you actually have someone actually respond to your comments? Most people don't from the other live streams I've seen unless you're dropping super chats. They can respond to you. At least you can acknowledge the fact that I'm taking you seriously. But back to the point. So Robert can go back for decades and see her calling herself Black Stop Lying. Black Stop Lying. Why are you lying? Be- Again, you need to get out of a 15-year-old mindset. Simply saying someone lying is not proving your point. I don't care what she calls herself. She's not black. If she's not if her ancestry does not come from black Americans who came to this country before 1860, she's not black. She's a black adjacent immigrant. She's not black. She's not foundational black American. She's not related to the American descendants of slavery who've been in this country since 1619. Dirty NGR says blacks always let heathens join when they shouldn't. I don't know what that means. Robert D says the fact that she's been calling herself black and Indian because she is black and Indian. She's been saying it going back that age. You can look it up. Again, we're not going by what she said. I'm saying how it was reported in the press was she's the first first Indian U.S. senator. They said nothing about her black ancestry. Also, let's say that she has been, always acknowledging both sides of her family ancestry. Cool. However, she's Jamaican. She's not black, and I don't care what you think about that. Jamaicans them are not part of the American descendants of slavery. Jamaica's not part of the U.S. Ergo, she's not foundational Black American. William Young says it doesn't bother you that Trump gave HBCUs less money by not adjusting annually and doing 10-year grant instead. Is that true, William? Or are you just making a rhetorical argument? I mean, because again, he actually gave money to HBCUs, something that was not done by the previous two presidents. Not by Obama, not by Bush. I don't even think Clinton did, but I can't look that far. I don't have any insight that far back into the Clinton era, as I was a teenager back then. But from the Bush years and the Obama years, they didn't give money to HBCUs. Trump did. So again, I think you guys are misusing money, the term money, to refer to many different things. Because we're not talking about just federal student aid. We're talking about money given specifically just to HBCUs. That was something that Trump did, that the previous president Obama didn't, nor Bush did. Susan Wells says uh, her mother is South Indian, her father is Hindu and Irish. Where does the black come in? He so I will acknowledge Susan. Her father was of does have black Jamaican ancestry. Um, but yes, he's of mixed race as well. Um, his ancestry wasn't just African; it was also European, and I think also East Indian as well. And her mother was, I've seen the pictures of her mother when she was younger. Her mother was quite beautiful. That's something nice I can say about her. She had a beautiful mother. She had a lovely family. Were they black? No, they weren't black. Did her father have African ancestry? Yes, he did. Her father did actually have African ancestry, but he is Jamaican. He's not from the United States, so he's not black. Black people have started to reclaim the name black from people who want to misuse it. These tethers. Harris is a tether. Obama is a tether. That that chick on MSNBC, she is a tether. These are people who are black adjacent and are black when it's politically expedient for them to do so, but don't share our history here in America. Don't share our legacy as American descendants of slavery. Um, yeah, thank you, Onyx. This is what I was talking about earlier. Matter of fact, Onyx says Trump had a black woman homeless um, come to Trump Tower security. Um, Come to Trump Tower security was going to throw her out. Trump told security to give her a room, roses once a week, and 3 hot meals a day. Again, this is actual um, this is an actual event that can be fact checked, that he did actually house a poor black woman in Trump Towers. That is something that can be fact checked. Robert D. I think this is response to Susan. He says if you can look at her father and say that he's not black but he's Irish, you need Stevie Wonder's glasses. Um, okay. Again, to go to Susan's point, what she's saying is that, and she might be partly wrong on this, and I've already spoken to that. She's saying that Harris' father is of mixed ancestry, which he is. He has African ancestry, he has European ancestry, and I believe he also has South Asian ancestry. Um, does he look black adjacent? Yes, he does. But is he a black man? No, he is not. He is not aligned with the American descendants of slavery, the foundational black Americans. So he's not black. But I acknowledge he does have African ancestry. Absolutely. I won't deny that. Williams says the consolidation underneath Trump's lost trade war led to unprecedented price power and price gouging. If you say so, my friend. Robert D says I can never vote for a president who supports the Confederacy. Yeah, neither could I. But guess what? Trump didn't support the Confederacy. You said you wouldn't support a president who supports the Confederacy, but would you have voted for Biden for a second term? A man who eulogized the KKK leader, a man who worked with white supremacist Strom Thurmond to prevent black children from being bused to white schools, a man who instituted the 1988 crack bill, a man who helped institute the 1994 crime bill, a man who argued before Congress with the Clintons that young black men were super predators. Not to mention, again, look at American history, most of those Confederates were Democrats. But you're emotional. Anyway, William says HR 7. Thank you for actually naming something, William. I appreciate that. He says HR 7688 was to address price gouging, and Republicans voted against it. Okay. So at least you brought up something. House Resolution 7688 was to address price gouging. From there, we can actually fact check that. But again, the economy was doing better under Trump. Now, are there certain policies that put in place that may have hurt the economy later on? Sure, I will acknowledge that, because it's often not the case that a president does something within their own term that affects the economy within that presidential term. It usually kicks in within the next term or next few terms. So is it possible that he could have signed on to legislation at the time that may have hurt the economy today? That is possible. However, what people are looking at right now is how was the economy running while he was in office. And arguably the economy was running much better while he was in office at that time. Again, working in the financial service sector, I know for a fact that the economy was better when he was in office. Was he the cause of the economy being better? I can't say that, because it's correlational, right? I can't say that he was the cause for the economy being better while he was in office. What I can say was that if the economy indeed was in a better, healthier state when he was in office, but I can't say he was the cause of that, right? Shea Boogie says no, not at all, because all universities are just ways to create extra debt. Just my opinion. That's why they took all the trades from the high schools years ago. Shoot, and here's another thing, Shay. Going to trade school is just as expensive as going to college nowadays. Like some of them, like now you can find some trade schools that will pay that will pay your way in. Like you can, they might offer scholarships and stuff like that. But these trade schools are just expensive as a 4 years of college. That's why, like I've had people say, yeah, these guys should go get CDLs and become truck drivers and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, okay. I was like, this the training for some of these truck driving schools is expensive as going to college. Like, because someone was saying that to me, they was like, "Man, you can make a lot more money, get a CDL." I'm like, slow you, including one of my dumbass fucking parents. And yes, I don't like my parents. That's a whole different subject that I've talked about in the past. But I was like, why would I? I was like, the money I could spend getting my CDL, I might as well just finish my master's degree. And that family member was like, oh. I was like, yeah, exactly. Shut up. Not you, but that parent. Um, but yeah, trade schools are very expensive today. Like unless unless there's like some sort of program that subsidizes the training, or that school offers you like um, some sort of tuition reimbursement, or you go to work for a specific um, company where they pay for the training. Trade school is expensive now, and yeah, they removed a lot of these trades out of schools decades ago. I think one, because a lot of the schools were starting to prefer just classes geared towards pushing people into college, right? And then also because a lot of these schools don't have this the 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 financial backings that they had to offer all these sorts of programs. Like a lot of high schools have been gutted as far as the courses they offer people, especially in lower income communities. Like a lot of these schools have don't have very robust curricula that can offer stuff, like because a lot of these people in these low income communities say, well, I want my kids to learn this and that and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, that's cool, but you have to realize that when you send your kids to these public schools in these low income communities, these schools receive funding from from the property taxes and stuff like that of these communities. And then there's a lot of these lower income communities where people don't even own their homes. There's not a lot of funding going to these schools. So, but that's a completely different topic, Shay. I want to go astray. Robert D says, "What are you? What are you running? An exclusive club? Who decide who's black and who's not?" I sure the fuck am, because I'm Black American, and I get to say yes. I get to say Caribbean people, African people, and Afro Latino people aren't black, because for decades they said they weren't black. For decades they said, I'm not black, I'm Nigerian. You guys are a bunch of slaves. All right, all these people from the Caribbean. Now, I'm not black. I'm Jamaican. I'm Trinidad. I'm Trinidadian. I'm Bajan from Barbados. I'm such and such. Well, all these Afro Latinos. Man, I'm Panamanian. I'm not black. All right, cool. So now you own it, and the U.S. Census coming out very shortly is going to be able to tease that apart. Now, they're now not late classing all people from the African diaspora in one group. Now you'll be able to have Black Americans tease apart themselves from these Black immigrants, these immigrants from African and Caribbean and Latin countries. So yeah, as a foundational Black American, I do get to decide who's black. I absolutely do. No, and it's not we must all come to ask me who are we black. You are very emotional. And besides that, this is not this is not new. This was something written into policy in the past. What we now call foundational Black Americans, or ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery, these people were called freedmen in government documents. They were recognized as the people freed from slavery. American American slavery. When certain policies went into place in the 50s and 60s, these were set aside, like the civil rights and other policies. They were set aside specifically for the freedmen. This is how they used to also how they referred to specifically Black Americans to separate them from other immigrants of African ancestry, the freedmen. This is not a new thing. William says, agreed, the KKK and white power dog whistles were a bit gross, Robert. Thank you. Thank you, William, that we can both agree on that. I appreciate that. Honest says, does anybody remember the Tulsa, Oklahoma bombings? Yeah, that was the Democrats. Yeah, that's what I was trying to tell them, Onyx. Like, people keep saying if you support Trump or you support Republicanship, supporting the Confederacy, and they're just ignoring the fact that the antebellum South were mostly Democrats, and they still exist there. They're called the now they call them the Dixiecrats. These are the small contingent of conservative Democrats within the Democratic base who still harbor these white supremacist views. They're still a part of the Democratic base just because most of those people in their constituency still vote as Democrats, but they're Democratic in name alone. Like, they don't support the liberal ideology of mainstream Democrats. They support the old white supremacist views of the Democrats back in the 1800s and early 1900s. These were the people who, yes, committed those atrocities like the Tulsa, Oklahoma bombings. These were the people who broke off from the Union during the Civil War. These were Democrats. These were not Republicans. The Republicans were the ones who fought, who 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 led the Union against the rebellion. I don't see where there's confusion on that when this is like, I guess because some people didn't pay attention in history class that Abraham Lincoln was a Republican, that the Union was led by a Republican base of senators and congressional leaders and so forth. That it was the Republicans after the Civil War that set up the Reconstruction era, gave which not only freed the slaves but gave them the rights to vote, let them hold public office, gave them land, and that it was the Democrats who swept into office after the Reconstruction era and took away all these things, all this progress that blacks had made after being released from slavery. It was Democrats. I don't know how they confused that, Onyx, but I guess when you're trying to tell a narrative, you have to distort facts in order to keep that narrative going. Cool G says, "Don't y'all know it's white, Chinese, etc. Jamaicans? Why does everybody think Jamaicans are all dark skinned?" Absolutely, Cool G. I so here's another thing, and I've talked about this previously. I grew up in a Jamaican community in Baltimore as a young kid, Park Heights. People can look up Park Heights, Baltimore. That's also where Jada Pinkett Smith is from, and her mother is Jamaican from Park Heights, Baltimore. Give me a second. Let me get this. My other phone. But yeah, I grew up around Jamaicans as a young kid in Baltimore. My nanny, when I was a baby, when I was a toddler, was Jamaican. That's when I first fell in love with Jamaican food because my nanny used to feed me Jamaican food, curry chicken, oxtail, beef stew, um, roti, cocoa bread, rice and peas, plantain, um, the the beef patties, all this sort of stuff. Like I grew up around them, and I have, and you know, I have no problem with them whatsoever, none. So I don't want people to think I have a thing against Caribbeans or Africans or Afro Latinos. I have nothing against them. If you know, if it came down to it, I would consider them my brothers. But when it comes to whom I consider black, that's a whole different thing because that's not just an it's both a political and ethnic identity, right? So let me get some more of my coffee here. You can buy me a coffee. But yeah, and to Coogie's point, look at Sean Paul. Sean Paul is Jamaican, but I dare say he's not black. That man is of mixed European, Asian, and black ancestry. Sean Paul is definitely not black. He's not even black adjacent when you look like when you see him. If you guys don't know who Sean Paul is, don't worry about it. Just give me the lie. No, I was playing, but um, but no. So yeah, Jamaicans like just because someone's Jamaican doesn't make them black or black. Or I should say black. It doesn't make them black adjacent just because they're Jamaican. Because not all Jamaicans are black. There's a lot of them of European ancestry, Asian ancestry, Indian ancestry, and some who still have indigenous ancestry. Jamaica was named after is named after the indigenous people who live in that island at the time. They were part of the indigenous Carib people. I'm sorry. So even though Columbus did wipe them out, there's still people with that ancestry in the islands, just like the Taino people of Puerto Rico. So Rube says, remember when Trump bent the knee to Putin in front of the world to see his own U.S. over his own USA intelligence? Mm. You mean the way Biden gave away $100 billion to the Ukrainian president? Here's another point I agree with William. Thanks, William. At least we can disagree and still be reasonable, right? William says it should be country first, not party. On that, I think we both can agree on. That's been my point from the beginning of this stream that people should vote based on policies, based on their interests, not based on party, not based on racial identity. We can argue until we're blue in the face whether Harris is considered black or not. But at the end of the day, whether she's black or not has nothing to do with whether she's going to represent my interests. She doesn't. She doesn't represent my interests. So whether she was an actual black American or not, I would never vote for her because she doesn't represent my interests. And Shay brings up another good point. She said, Robert, we all don't identify as black just because we look like we are. Exactly. Thank you. And that's what I've been also saying from the beginning. It's just because someone's black adjacent doesn't mean they identify as black. Many of these people whom I am saying aren't black would tell you themselves they don't identify as black. There are people in Panama darker than me. They will tell you they are not black. There are people in there are Dominicans darker than me in places like Santo Domingo and Punta Cana who would say they are not black. They don't, because that's not how they identify. They identify by, they may identify by their their national identity, or by other ancestry. And a lot of these Dominicans will say, I'm not black, I'm Dominican. Not all skin, like there's an old saying, not all skin folk are kinfolk. It's an old black saying. Not all skin folk are kinfolk. Just because they look like us does not mean they identify as black. Shay is Shay hit that right on the head. Trump told you what he thought of you with that black job comment. No, Robert D. He was, yes. Was it an artful comment? No, it wasn't an artful comment. But did that comment have merit? Yes. He was saying that immigrants are going to be vying for the same economic resources as black people, the same source of jobs, the same resources. They've even been put in the same communities as these people and receiving subsidies and housing for free in places where these asking for it for decades. Was it an artful comment? Yes, it was not. It was not an artful comment, but it had merit. He was saying these immigrants are going to be taking up resources and jobs that will go to some of these blue collar black people. You okay? You keep bringing up the trickle down, but I'm not. There's no point in this conversation, William, where I have argued for trickle down economics. There's there hasn't been. Like I said, I can make an argument to do so, but I have not argued for that here. And what we call trickle down, this is called supply side economics. Is supply side economics controversial? Yeah, it is. I'm not trying to defend it here. That's not the point of my topic, and I have not anywhere in this argument tried to defend supply side economics or so-called trickle down theory. If you can point out where you think I've defended supply side economics, go ahead and leave that comment. But I don't believe that I have. Susan again hit the nail on the head. She said she's only saying she's black now because she wants the black vote. Exactly. Now I'll so Susan, I'll concede to his point that she's acknowledged that she's had black ancestry since she was younger. Okay, that's fine. But as a candidate, has she been out there, you know, stumping on the fact that she's black? I don't remember so until she ran for president back in 2020. Up until then, I just remember them talking about her being the first Indian U.S. senator, and that was what even made the press at the time. Like they made a big hoopla about it. She's the first Indian U.S. senator. Give me 1 second, guys. All right. Onyx says Robert D. Biden told you how he felt during the Charlemagne episode. You ain't black unless you vote for me. Exactly. And people just gave him a pass. And again, I'm putting on my cards on the table. Guys, Biden's first term, I voted for him. Even though I was pissed off when he made that statement, I still bit the bitter pill and voted for him because a, a bunch of other people believed that he was going to be a better president than Trump, and I was wrong. And I've conceded that. I've said this in many other videos that I've I've posted as well as in previous live streams. I voted for him first term because I mistakenly believed that he would be a better president than Trump, and I was wrong. Again, intellectual humility. I can concede when I was wrong or ignorant of something in the past or now, and I was wrong. Um, William says usually they go to places with services. I don't get that exactly. Shay says I'm American Indian, not a red dot like Kamala. My grandfather's from Trinidad, so no, some of us are different. Exact. Thank you, Shay. Um, I used never mind. That's an aside. I was gonna say the the funny thing is like even though I'm making this distinction between Black people and Caribbeans and Africans and Afro Latinos, those were the women I mostly dated. I don't know if there was something going on from when I was younger, having that experience with having a Jamaican nanny that maybe that did something to me where I was like attracted to them. But yeah, I'm very well immersed in the Caribbean community. Like so much so they used to ask me, was I Caribbean? Like people asked me, was I Dominican or was I from Barbados and stuff like that. I'm like, no, I'm just Black American. They were like, oh, okay. But yeah, I dated a chick. She was from Trinidad. She was half Chinese, half Black, and she didn't consider herself Black. She considered herself Trinidadian. And like when I asked her ancestry, she was like, my father was like a she was saying, yeah, her father was like Black or whatever, but her mom was Chinese, so she didn't consider herself Black. She considered me Black, and just she would just call me a Yankee. But yeah, Robert D says Trump said similar things. Okay, that guy says Shay Boogie, you Cherokee or what? Okay, so guys, all right, all right, I'm gonna go off on a tangent in a second. So most people with Indian ancestry, American Indian ancestry, are not Cherokee. I think that's a myth because most people just don't know the names of all the tribes. There are over 560 federally recognized tribes in America, and people always talk about Cherokee because that's really the only name they can think of. When there's a bunch of other tribes that people might be related to, depending on where their family lived in back in the 1800s, or maybe even earlier than that, but at least by the 1800s. Um, Most people aren't Cherokee, and I think the Cherokees are both annoyed, from what I understand, are both annoyed and humored by the fact that most people think they're Cherokee. Now she might be, I don't know, but if she's if she's from the Caribbean, her family is, her people might be actually related to the Carib people or the Arawak people who were indigenous to the Caribbean. Well, but she can tell us for herself. I can't speak on her ancestry. Robert D says you're just sitting there lying. You need to grow up. Like it doesn't miss anyone in this chat room that you can't argue rationally your views. So every time your points are defeated by I and others, you can only say we're lying. That doesn't work for adults. That might work in high school, and it might work amongst a bunch of low IQ people, but that's not going to work here. William says trafficking people to Martha's Vineyard, middle of the winter, wasn't cute. It was trafficking and putting people in danger. I don't know what that is. He said I have a business degree and minor in economics. Okay, no, dude. I wasn't calling out your academic accolades. My criticisms were mostly for Robert D. But what I was arguing with you about, well, what not arguing, what I was disagreeing with you about is that I did not bring up the issue of trickle down theory in this conversation. You are bringing it up, and I'm saying that unless you can point to a point where I was talking about trickle down theory, I was not referring to supply side economics anywhere in this conversation. What I did say is that working in the financial service sector, that the economy was better under Trump, the 4 years he was in office. That is what I did say. I didn't mention anything about trickle down theory. You brought that up. Shay Boogie says that guy, yes sir. Oh, so she is Cherokee. And so if some people's family was from Oklahoma, or they, or if their family interacted with the Cherokees back in like the 1700s, early 1800s, before the Trail of Tears, before they were pushed out to Oklahoma, because their original home was in Oklahoma. It was in like the Carolinas and parts of Georgia, that area, and there's still a small contingent of Cherokee people still in North Carolina, um, but the majority of them, along with some of the other um, tribal nations of that time within that part of the southeast, were pushed west out to Oklahoma and other places surrounding that during the Trail of Tears. And you can track people's ancestry through things like the Dawes rolls and some other historical documents that they documented at the time, all these people who went out west during the Trail of Tears to the reservation. A caveat to that is that there were black people at the time who also went on the Trail of Tears and would be probably labeled Cherokee or one of these other groups like the Chickasaw or the Creek, because if they were light enough, they could be passing for native. So some of them would have been would have taken their chances, um, if they were slaves, passing as a native person than as a black person, and vice versa. Some of the natives may have actually lied and said they were black to prevent being forced to go out west. And another caveat was some of these tribes, the so-called five civilized tribes, the Creek, the Chickasaw, the Cherokee, the Seminole, and I forgot the other tribe, but the so-called five civilized tribes, they also held slaves. So within their tribal memberships, they would have been considered parts of those tribes, even though they weren't ethnically American Indian. They would have been considered American Indian as recognized by the federal government because they were held as slaves by those tribal nations. But anyway, big tangent. Get back to the point here. William says so. Maybe giving all the resources to the 1% is an issue. That can be an issue, but that's not relevant to what I'm talking about here. And also, I think it begs the question whether we were giving all the resources to the 1%. I don't agree with that. And again, to be fair to any president, not just Trump, but to Biden, to Obama, to Bush, to Clinton, to Bush Sr., to Reagan, to Carter, to Lyndon Johnson, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, most problems that happen with the economy are not usually of that president's doing within his own term. It's usually from the previous presidents, right? Um, So as far as giving all the resources to the 1%, that just didn't happen under Trump, nor did it happen under Obama before him. We weren't given all the resources to the 1%. The 1% have a huge amount of resources already. That's what makes them the 1%. They're not the 1% because they were given the resources. They're the 1% because they already have outsides of those uh, most of those resources. So guys, I'm gonna end this pretty soon because I need to eat and work out and all those good things. I just wanted to try this out on a Sunday morning to see how this went, and it actually went rather well. Um, Doc Spencer says, "Good Sunday to you, sir. Hopefully everything has been great. Just been busy working. Thanks, Doc. Appreciate it." And Susan West says, "And guess what? Her family owned black slaves." I said that too as well, Susan. I said that about probably 2 hours ago, so most people probably don't remember what we said in the stream. But yeah, I've also argued that as well, that her European side of her family from her father did own slaves. Press places our political system is suffering when it's Trump versus Kamala instead of a real debate on who has the best policies. We deserve better. Hashtag policy over politics. Thank you, Press Play. If you're just joining the conversation, I've literally been arguing that from the very beginning of the stream, and I've been getting a lot of pushback, which is simply that we shouldn't be voting on people based on the party or based on the racial identity. That we should be voting on people based on their policies and what those and who has the policies that represent our interests. That's what I've been arguing from the very beginning since this 3 hour stream started. Was I have not told people whom to vote for. I have not said, hey, because I'm a Trump supporter, you need to vote for Trump. I never said that. All I've said is vote according to your interests. So if your interests align with Kamala Harris, go ahead and vote for her. If your interests align with RFK Jr., go ahead and vote for that man. If your um, interests align with the Green Party, with Dr. Jill Stein, vote for Jill Stein. I think she's a nutbag, but go ahead and vote for her if that's your interest. Um, I think Cornel West is still running as an independent. If you want to vote for that man, vote for him. I would have voted for him if he had a if if I knew if I knew more about his platform and agreed with it. I was all for him. The Democrats pushed him away because they were scared that he was going to get too much of the black vote. So they said we were not going to allow him to run as a Democrat. So first he decided he was going to be part of the Reform Party. Then, because the Reform Party is dealing with some internal issues, he left the Reform Party and decided to run under the Green Party. Then the Green Party decided they were going to run Jill Stein in place of him as their nominee. So he left the Green Party and now is running as an independent. And he was starting to gather a lot of interest in his campaign. So someone leaked the fact that, oh, this man is dealing with issues dealing with child support and stuff like that. And let's be perfectly frank. The Republican Party didn't see him as a threat. The Democrats did. So if I were to place money on a bet to say whom was the ones who probably put out this information about that man having child support issues and problems with baby mama drama, I would place that bet on someone from the DNC or someone aligned with the DNC. But I'm telling people, vote your interests, vote based on policies. Don't vote based on party. Don't vote based on racial identity. Vote on the things that matters. Your wallet, your children, your future. That shouldn't be controversial. But everything in politics is like controversial just by necessity, I guess, the way electoral politics works. William says that consolidation left less to us and and more price gouging. Okay. Shay says just because somebody is black doesn't mean that they care about black people issues, and that's another point that I brought up as well, Shay. I said the very same thing that even if she were black, I was like, let's concede the point and say that let's say that Kamala Harris is a foundational black American woman, true through and through, traced her ancestry to like places like Mississippi or Alabama or Virginia or South Carolina, North Carolina, Maryland, one of these states where people were imported as slaves. She can trace her history back to that time. That doesn't mean that she represents issues that black people care about, that she support our community, because she doesn't. And she hasn't in her legal tenure as a state's attorney and later as an attorney general in California, nor as a US senator in California. I mean, let's not forget that when she ran for president, she lost her own state. Andrew Young won California. And he dropped out before her. But he won California. She couldn't even win her own state when she got during the primaries back in 2020 because black people by and large did not vote for her in California. They didn't like her because of her legal career in which she was very harsh to black people on, as a prosecutor. Again, all skin folk aren't kinfolk. You said, why do you ding one person's family for owning black slaves but not another? Who was the other? Why you keep making rhetorical questions? Who was the other? Trump's family is mostly German. They didn't own slaves. They didn't arrive here until after slavery was over. Like their family name in German was Drumpf, Drumpf, which was later anglicized to Trump. And hopefully, if Miss Needle comes on one day, she can verify that for me since she's German, lives in Germany right now. But you're saying I'm dinging one family's um, owning slaves over another. Who is who is the other one? Robert says I'm 14% Irish. I'm sure some of my family owns slaves. Doesn't make me white, and it doesn't make me have my own slaves. That doesn't follow from what we're saying. That doesn't that's again another non sequitur. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Did I call? Did I say that you were white? No. What I did say is I doubted that you were a foundational Black American because this, your points you were making. That I did say. I didn't call into question whether your family owned slaves, nor did I call you white. What I said is I don't think you were a foundational Black American. I did say that. Onyx says when Obama brought up black jobs, it was different because right. Like so when other people, basically Onyx, when one person says something it's taken in one context, and when another person says the exact same thing, it's taken in another context based on whether they like the person or not, right? Just Jesus, ha ha ha, OMG, you think Trump gives a F about you or the black community? You are a clueless man with a live stream. Boring. Then leave, Jess. No one said you had to be here. And I never said he gives an F about me. I said, I, I said that I support his policies on the economy and immigration. I've said that numerous times. I didn't say he gives a F about me. Grow up. Do you love Donald Trump? Hmm? I don't love anyone other than, my wife and some of my family, not all, and my friends. I don't love people whom I've never met, except maybe Batman. I'm playing, but and Luke Skywalker. But yeah, other than that, no. I don't love other grown men that I no. Do I support him? Yes. If that's what you're asking, do I support Trump? Yes, I do. That's if that's your question. Bet Davis is even gentlemen. What's up? William says, do you support GOP vouchers that define predominantly minority schools? You mean okay? I mean, I get what you're saying. It was misspelled, but um, you said, but you're asking, do I support the the G, the vouchers for charter schools? Yeah, if that'll get a kid who has the cognitive capacity to exceed in school out of one of these little local failing public schools, absolutely. William says I'm 100% for ranked choice. So am I. Robert D says that would exclude you because all you did was sit here lying. Okay, whatever, bro. Go change your tampon. Anyway, that guy says at Shea Boogie, your ancestors have a lot of history, and I love reading on the culture. And all mad respect to you. Hope Shay comes back for more live streams because I love to have a female perspective on my streams because majority male. So I love having female perspectives. I have one so far. I have Miss Needle. She's a German woman. She comes here some and a musician. I've actually done a live stream with her. We're going to do another one when her health is up. But I like having a female perspective on these things because um, you know when it's just a bunch of guys talking, we can get lost in the sauce when we're just talking. When we're just so-called mansplaining, right? But it's good to get that perspective. Press Play says our political system is suffering when it's Trump versus Kamala, a democratic strategy to make it quote him versus her unquote identity politics play instead of focusing on who has the best policies. Again, hashtag policies over politics. Well said. Robert D says the most high spirited everyone's life, the most highest spirit everyone's life who is alive. Sorry, I'm sure that's a typo. Uh, William Young says that's a poll test and would be classes and races. Oh, okay, so I guess I'm catching the comments from long ago, and I'm not talking about a poll test, William. I'm actually talking about what's called an epistocracy. This has been something argued since Plato. Um, what what an epistocracy is, and this is not of my invention, so I'm not trying to claim this as have invented this idea. An epistocracy means a government of the knowing. Um, Plato argued this in his own form when he argued for philosopher kings ruling countries. Um, and when we talk about epistocracy, I didn't say that if we give people weighted votes, that everyone else wouldn't have a vote either. What I was saying is, so everyone still gets a vote. However, if people can show that they are politically informed, they get a weighted vote instead of just a regular vote. That's what I'm saying. And I'm not talking about a poll test. I'm talking about, and frankly, I don't care. It's not racist. That's definitely not the case. Is it classes? I don't care if it's classes because all of us are elitists when it comes to who runs the government. This is why everyone makes fun of people whom they consider to be stupid who run for office. They made fun of Trump for allegedly being stupid. They made fun of Bush for allegedly being stupid. Meanwhile, both of these men went to Ivy League universities. Did they get in through some nepotism or cronyism? Sure, but they still had to pass on their own merits, which they did. Bush even went on to get an MBA afterwards. And he went to Yale. When they actually did a comparison of his GPA to his rival at the time, John Kerry, they both found that they were both average students, C average students. They were both in the same secret society, the Skulls and Bones. But because one a tendency for speaking very colloquially, he was considered dumb, while the other one, who was more erudite in how he spoke, more elegant, was considered the smarter one. But they both were of roughly the same intelligence. But that goes to the point that we all are elitists when it comes to the highest office in the land, for good reason. We want the best and the brightest to run our country. And as far as it being classes to have an epistocracy, I'm fine with that. The reason why there is so much voter apathy among the youth is because they tend to be the most politically informed base in our electorate. However, they are dismayed at the fact that the local idiot across the street has the same voting power as they do, even though they're the one who actually knows what's going on. They actually know who the candidates are. They actually know their policies. But old dum dum across the street is going to vote for someone just because he's Democrat or just because he's Republican, or he's going to vote just because this is the kind of guy I can sit down with a beer. What the fuck does that have to do with his policies? I don't care whether I personally like the person. I care, are these the policies that I want in place that this person is supporting? Policy over politics. And yes, if there is a measure that people can do that can assure they get a weighted vote instead of a regular vote, it would go better because it means that people who were politically informed would be making more of the decisions on the outcome of the government. And our founding fathers wanted that, actually. Read the old Federalist Papers from the founding fathers in the 1700s. The, the Federalists wanted didn't want everyone to have the right to vote. They only wanted people who were like land owning Christian white males to vote because they believed those were the only people who had skin in the game, who would make good decisions on the leadership of this country. Do I agree with them on that? Not completely, no. I do agree that they were right to say that the average man wasn't politically informed enough to make sound decisions on the leadership of this country, which is why they started the electoral vote. The electoral vote was a compromise between one half of the founding fathers who wanted a popular vote and the other half who wanted a parliamentary system, like in the UK. So they split the difference, so to speak, and said, well, let's have an electoral vote where the electoral vote decides the election, but the electoral vote would be decided by electoral college voters based on the popular vote within that state. And then they got into that whole thing with slavery. We don't need to go there. We know about the whole three fifths that, right? But guys, I'm about to go within a few minutes. Um, But no, to clarify, William, I don't believe in a poll test. When I'm referring to an epistocracy, ref- it the devil's definitely in the details. I think we both can agree. I think we both would think a poll test would be a bad idea. What I'm saying is everyone still gets a vote. However, some people will be able to have a weighted vote instead of just a regular vote, depending on whether they can demonstrate that they have a a, a, a thorough grasp of the candidates and their policies. Like notice even now, like when you go to the polls, before you go to the polls, you'll get information that comes to you, at least in Maryland. I don't know in other states, where they'll give you information about the candidates and their positions that you can use to better make decisions when you go down to the polls during the midterms and during the presidential elections. Robert D says everyone who is alive right now has their life spared by God. Well, maybe. I don't know about that. So what about all the people who who died needlessly, or were they somehow were these innocent people, children, somehow not the right people to be alive? I don't agree with that. William Young says, "Beware of false idols." All right, guys. So I'm about to go, but I'm gonna get through all my super chats first because I have to acknowledge people who dropped me a super chat or a super sticker. But I'm gonna go after that because I just can't get through all these comments and they've really poured in. Um, but yeah, it's just gonna be impossible for me to get through all these guys. Skillet Water dropped me another super chat, so shout out to Skillet Water again. Skillet says, "I don't know about it, y'all, but Vermin Supreme would be a funny third party vote." That's funny. And again, I'm sorry if I can't acknowledge everyone's comments. It's completely way too many to go through. Thank you, Mrs. Contrarian, for helping me um, moderate this. Shout out to my wife, Mrs. Contrarian, guys. But um, again, I'm not telling you not to vote for Kamala, okay? And I'm not telling you to vote for Trump. What I'm saying is vote policy. If those policies represent your interests, then that's whom you should vote for. If they don't, then you shouldn't vote for that person. Set aside the party, set aside the racial identity, set aside that this is a person you want to get a beer with. That has nothing to do with their policies. Vote your interests, whatever those interests may be. Um, but again, guys, I'm sorry I cannot get through all these comments. But this was a good experiment because I've never done a chat on Saturday morning. Well, now in afternoon. Um, so I'm scrolling down and I see that I'm at least an hour from the last from the most recent comments. And Cherry says, "Way to vote, really? Come on, man." Yes, I am talking about a way to vote, guys. Look up Epistocracy, Epistocracy, Epistocracy. There's an argument from a good uh, philosophy professor on this idea. You can disagree with it, but at least know about what I'm talking about. Okay. Um, But let me go, guys, because I need to eat and uh, relax and do all these normal human functions. Don't need to mention those things, but do those. And I still need to work out. But I appreciate all the discussion here, and I'm sorry I can't get to everyone's discussions. I mean, everyone's comments, but it, even if I took an extra hour to get through the comments, there would just be more coming in, so I would never catch up. So everything I said, I think I had to say, and if you didn't catch everything that I said, once this ends, you can watch the replay of the first 1 or 2 hours, and I've stated pretty much all my major points. Okay, but I appreciate everyone. Thanks a lot. We'll do it again. Um, I see now that I think these Sunday mornings might be a good time to do these live streams. All right, guys, I'm out. Thanks, Mrs. Contrarian, for holding me down. See you guys later.